IB Nation, Notre Dame fans across this fruited plain, and some of our friends that aren't in the United States. We have some friends in Canada. We have some friends over in Europe, overseas. We have service members all over. All of you, welcome to the latest edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by FanDuel as part of the Believe Network. My man Trevor Trowbridge is here with me today, and we have a lot of topics to go on with today. We had a plan set, and then Notre Dame said, we're going to mess up with you a little bit today, Driscoll. We're going to announce our captains and make you guys talk about that, which we are excited to do. So part one of today's show, we are going to talk about Notre Dame captains, and there were 6 named today, Trev. A lot of expected, some surprises of who was on and who wasn't on it. And then part 2 of the show today is we're going to talk about the quarterback battle. We're going to talk about the latest things that we've heard. We're going to talk about what the coaches have said, kind of give an idea of what we think is going to happen, and just, you know, our assessment of it. No intel, but just our opinion and things that we have seen and what we believe is going to happen. Then part 3 of the show is we are going to talk a little intel here, and that is that we continue to hear that the Notre Dame defense has been lights out in fall camp. So we're going to talk about that. Have some questions about can this unit really be a foundation like it was last year and in past seasons of another deep run, and we're going to talk about that. And then if we have some time, we're going to do a mailbag. So if you guys have some mailbag questions that you want to get in there, we'll try to get to those at the end of the show if we have time. Go ahead and put an MB, or you can put we'll have like a little mailbox emoji on there, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the show as best as we can. So Trevor, before we begin, I did want to go over some sort of our plan for the week and announce a little bit of what our Miami game week is going to be, and then how our game week coverage will change post-Miami. So this week, obviously, Trevor and I are live now. We're going to go live tomorrow, talk about some Notre Dame topics. We'll have our BISO hold, our final BISO hold of the summer on Wednesday. Thursday, we're going to be off during the day. My wife is going to be having surgery on Thursday, so I'm going to be dealing with that and being with her that day. It's a pretty major thing, and so I want to be there for her. And the guys are going to, Vince and Trevor are going to. We have a new show that's going to go live on CFB Nation that Vince and Trevor are going to do. If we can get everything finalized by Thursday, they're going to go live Thursday night. So we'll have a show Thursday night, and then we'll be back on Friday. Whether or not we have a mailbag on Friday or we have another topic depends on a couple things that are in the works. As of right now, it'll most likely be a Friday mailbag. And then this weekend, we will maybe have a show this weekend. We're thinking about doing some of our bold predictions, but we'll probably do that next week. And then Monday kicks off Miami week. And we will have a show this Monday. And then we will dive into our normal game week starting on Tuesday. So on Monday, I'm working on a special guest that knows a thing or two about the Miami rivalry that we're hoping to have on the show. And so if we're able to hammer all that down, then we will kind of have Monday be sort of a kickoff of the season, but then also just talking about this rivalry and what it means. Tuesday, Wednesday will be our sort of breakdown of the series. It's going to be a little different than it was last year, and the way that we did things last year. So there's going to be some changes. Thursday, we'll do our prediction show for Notre Dame. We'll do our keys to victory. We'll do our prediction show, and then we'll make our. I can't believe I'm saying this, Trevor. A week from Thursday, we're going to make our predictions of week 1 of the college football season. Can't believe we're already there, man. And then Friday, Sean and I will have an RTCF show, and that'll kind of kick things off. Now, once we get to game week, things are obviously going to be a little bit different because the first game's on a Sunday. But once we get into our normal game week, we won't have shows on Monday, and we're also going to not have our Upon Further Review on the YouTube channel during the season. So what we're going to do is that format of that show is going to be a little bit different. It's going to have more of a film breakdown aspect to it, as opposed to the stills and different things. And that show, the Upon Further Review, is now going to be into kind of 2 parts. The first part we'll have on the Irish Breakdown Champions Lounge, and then also we'll put that out on the podcast platform. The second part, and it'll be together, will be only on the premium message board. So the entire video will be on the premium message board. The second part will only be on there. We either put it up Sunday night, Monday morning, depending on what time we get done with it. And so we're still working on maybe some other things that I'm going to do video-wise for that Monday, just kind of like a standalone video. But there won't be a live show on Mondays during the season. I'm going to be spending all my time Sunday, Monday preparing for the Upon Further Review, which will now be on the premium message board only, which is the Champions Lounge. And then also I'm going to be doing a lot more film breakdowns, statistical analysis, things like that are going to go up on the message board as well. So that will be our new game plan. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday shows. We'll obviously have the post-game show on Saturdays. The first one will be Sunday night, obviously, because Notre Dame plays on a Sunday. And it's going to be a lot of fun, Trev. So it's going to be a little bit different format. Still going to be all about breaking it down. That's kind of who we are, Irish Breakdown. But the point is we want to do more that's just going to be on the Champions Lounge only. And that's what some of these changes are about. So we're going to still keep rocking and rolling with the podcast platform. So you can obviously find our channel on Irish Breakdown, whatever podcast platform you listen to. Also, we're going to have some more things on CFB Nation this year, and we'll announce sort of those as they come. Those will most likely two of the shows. Well, one show we'll probably announce this week and then start this week. The other one we'll probably announce and start next week. That's going to be a solo show hosted by Trevor. I mean, he can have guests on if he wants, but it'll be him having that show. And that's going to be previewing some things. And then he's going to also have another show on CFB Nation after game weeks. And he's going to break down kind of what we saw from the weekend before. So a lot different things. So we are taking some things away from the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel and putting it only on the Champions Lounge. But then we're adding some shows to the CFB Nation platform. So make sure you guys are subscribed to that. We can either obviously go to CFB Nation on YouTube, subscribe to that, and you can also subscribe to our channel and on whatever your podcast platform you listen to. We'll still have Bill Bender and Bill Troche. We'll still be there doing their show during the week. We'll put all of the predictions that we do. We'll put those videos up after we go live. We'll put those up on the CFB Nation channel. So you're definitely going to make sure you're subscribed to CFB Nation, because if you don't, you're not going to get our full package of things. And of course, if you want to get all the different things we do, and Trev has seen the plan, I put the plan on the board. I'm excited about the new content plan that we're going to have this year as well. And a lot of that's going to be driven towards the Champions Lounge. So that way we're making sure we're taking good care of our premium members that are paying their monthly and annual membership. So just wanted to kind of get that out of the way first. I told you guys that I would announce some of the changes that are coming this week. If you have any questions, you can shoot me a private message on Twitter, on X, at Coach D178. You can email me at brian@irishbreakdown.com. If you are a premium member, you can obviously put a question up on there. I won't really have time to respond to questions about it in the show because we're going to keep rolling. But if there's any questions, concerns, problems, whatever that you have, Twitter, Coach D178, my DMs are open. Email me, brian@irishbreakdown.com, or you can put a message up on the board. So that's the new Irish Breakdown content plan for the season, at least the YouTube version, the podcast version of it. And like I said, that I just wanted to give you guys as much notice as we can. But today, Trev, we are ready to go. You texted me. I was in the middle of a phone call, and you texted me like, hey, captains are out. Can we talk about that during the show? And I was like, yeah. But Notre Dame today, Trevor, announced their 6 captains, and they did it, I thought, in a pretty cool, creative way. So let's dive into that topic here now about the 6 captains for Notre Dame in 2025.
Yeah, it was. I was hanging out and I was doing some stuff on the message boards, and then I got the notification from Twitter that Notre Dame was releasing their captains. And basically, to give you guys a window in, we're going to break down, our overall thoughts, who was expected, some surprises in there. But look, Notre Dame named 6 captains. That's a bump up from what they had last year with the 5 they had last year. This one is a little bit more evenly distributed. But they named 6 captains in order. They listed off linebacker Drake Bowen, I'm sure to the surprise of not many, if any. Defensive tackle Donovan Einish, wide receiver Will Pauling, left guard Billy Schrouth, safety Adnan Schuler, and right tackle Emil Wagner. I think this is a really solid group of captains. And to your point, Brian, I really liked how they released it. They were able to give everybody kind of their 5 seconds. I guess you and I were on the phone and we were talking about it and we kept refreshing the page. So 5 seconds really spanned it out over about like 2-3 minutes.
Right.
We were excited to see who was next. but I was really excited to see who was coming in. I like this selection of captains. A lot of really big and good things to take away from this one.
No, there is, Trev. And as we're going through it, we were kind of doing our predictions. Okay, well, who do we think is going to be next? Who do we think is going to be next? And I think you texted me first that Drake Bowen was named one. And then I think when we reconnected again, they'd already announced Donovan Heinisch and Will Pauling. So the Bowen one was expected. I don't know that I thought Donovan Heinisch was going to be a captain just out of numbers, but he was a guy that we had mentioned as maybe potentially. I think that's a pretty cool honor. And obviously went through it. I look, so of the 6, Drake Bowen, I expected to be a captain. We expected at least one of those two offensive linemen to be a captain. Thought maybe both of them. Neither of those were surprising picks. And Don Schuler was not at all a surprising pick. I when I say surprises, because I'm like, wow, I didn't think that guy was captain material. But just, is a non-quarterback going to really come in as a one-year transfer and win a captaincy like Will Pauling did? I don't know that I've seen that before at Notre Dame. We've seen transfers win captain's awards. Obviously, Alohi Gilman became a captain in Notre Dame, but that wasn't until like his second and third season with the team. And we've seen quarterbacks come in and be named captains. Obviously, Sam Hartman was a captain in 2023. Riley Leonard was a captain last year. But to see a non-quarterback and a guy who might not even start for Notre Dame, to be honest with you, Trevor, he's going to play a ton. He's going to be a key figure, but it's not a given that Will Pauling is going to start. I did find that a little surprising, but man, what does it say about that kid? And then, of course, as I mentioned before about Donovan Heinisch. So I want to first talk, Trev, about just kind of go through the different players that were named captains and just briefly share our thoughts. And I wanted you to kind of kick things off. Obviously, Drake Bowen being named a captain, true junior captain, as is a Don Schuler. I was a little surprised we didn't get 2 new guys, and we will talk about the surprises sort of after we go through the 6. But Drake Bowen being named a captain, Trevor, was I would argue the least surprising captain move for this football team.
Like I said, when I read off the initial list, I think it came to the surprise of nobody, right? Us included. And when you look at Drake Bowen, he started to exhibit a lot of the qualities of leadership that you want to see a middle linebacker have last season. I've said it a lot this offseason. And his evolution from the Texas A&M game to the USC game was special. And you start to hear all of these things about him coming out from camp. He elects to forego playing baseball, another passion of his, to be with this Notre Dame program in the spring. And you hear in different interviews about Max Bulla and Chris Ash and his fellow linebackers raving about the job that he's doing. Plus, I also just like some aspect of the middle linebacker of your defense also being a team captain. They get called a lot of different names, the quarterback of the defense, leader of the defense. And I think Drake Bowen embodies that. And so I love the pick for Drake Bowen to be one of the 2025 team captains.
Like we said, it was not at all surprising. I mean, you're talking about a kid that was productive last year, 78 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles. But by the end of the season, I mean, he was kind of the on-field leader of the defense. I mean, you could just see it. You could see him taking command of huddles. You could see him. He was the guy that was getting everybody lined up and getting everybody set. And then, of course, the production, the clutch production that we came to expect from him last season. So not at all surprising. And I think his decision to give up baseball factored into this. I think it was just further evidence that he is fully committed to this. So, look, I think big things are expected of Drake this season from the football team, not just as a captain, but as a player. And I think we're going to see big things from Drake this season. Second captain that they announced, and we're just going to go in order in which Notre Dame announced it, was Donovan Heinisch. This is the cool part about this, in my opinion, is this is the second Heinisch brother to be named a captain in Notre Dame. And I believe we saw that with the Golics, and there's probably been some brother tandems in the past that have both been captains. I just think it's very cool that Kurt was named a captain in 2021, and now Donovan is named a captain in 2025. My surprise about Donovan being a captain is not that he's not captain worthy. It's not that he doesn't play like a captain. It's just kind of looking at the numbers and who we thought they might want to have on there. I thought was going to make it maybe a little bit tough for him, but it just says what his teammates think about him, that he was voted a captain. My understanding is you have to nominate yourself for captain, but the players then vote on it, is what they've told us in the past. And you just looking at a kid, Trevor, that last year stepped up when he was always part of the rotation, But when obviously Jason Onye goes out, and then a few weeks later, Howard Cross gets injured, and Donovan steps into that role and thrives. 4.5 sacks last year, all came from Florida State to the end of the season. Then, of course, the biggest sack of his career was basically the game-clinching sack against Georgia, where he sacks Gunnar Stockton on 4th down basically in the game. And to see him put in the work, there's Onye's having a monster spring or fall camp, and Jared Dawson's having a great fall camp, and there's this name and that name that we always talk about, and we don't talk a lot about Donovan Heinisch, but clearly his players, his teammates feel the impact of what he's done by the fact they named him a captain, which I think is just a very cool honor for him and for the family. Like, what does it say about the Heinisch family? And I've got a chance to meet mom and dad, and very, very interesting people, very cool people, very open, honest people, very friendly people. Enjoyed my one interaction with them. But like, you're sitting there saying, like, we must have done something right as parents. Because number one, we had 2 kids that could get into Notre Dame. And number 2, we had 2 kids that were named captains. Here's the bragging rights for Donnie, though. Donnie's going to be like, bro, I didn't need my 5th year. I didn't need to wait till my 5th year to be a captain. I got mine my senior year. That's the bragging rights for Donnie, is he'll be able to say, look, I got mine in year 4. You didn't get yours till year 5. But really cool that both of those young men were be able to name captain, and just a tremendous honor for Donnie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about these next 2 guys kind of in the same light, with Will Pauling, who was named after Donovan Heinisch. But Bryan, what does it say about these 2 guys who might not be in the starting lineup to begin the season that get named and voted on to be team captains? It goes to show that the production on the field isn't the only thing that matters when you're naming captains. I was surprised about Donovan being named a captain. To your point, Bryan, not about his character or what he means to the unit or the team or the defense. I just didn't think there was going to be a team captain along the defensive line in general, just because there's so many moving parts of, Rubio's back, but he's, focusing on staying healthy. And same thing with Jason Onye, finish the season, come back healthy, focus on being the best version of yourself. And then a lot of the ends are just really young. And we were talking about, if there was going to be one, I thought it was going to be a Josh Burnham or a Junior Tuihalamaka, but we did mention Donovan Heinisch. So, it's awesome for him. Great for the Heinisch family. It's really exciting to be able to say that 2 of your kids, 1 got into Notre Dame, and 2 ended up being team captains for the football team. So that's really, really impressive.
I think the thing for me with Will Pauling, Trevor, is as I said before, when they signed him, you don't think, oh, that guy's going to be a captain to Notre Dame. Both him and Malachi Fields were captains at their respective schools. So it's not that Will Pauling, there was never a question of, is he captain material? He was a captain of Wisconsin last year. You just don't see it. You don't see a transfer come over in year 1 who doesn't play quarterback get named a captain at a place like Notre Dame. We just haven't seen it. Not that I can remember. I honestly don't. Going back to Cody Riggs, I just don't remember a year 1 captain from the transfer portal that wasn't a quarterback. But it's not. I mean, it's a surprise in that regard. But the moment he arrived, it didn't become a surprise. I mean, you just heard great things about the work ethic, how well he was received in the locker room, just the leadership he showed, and we heard it all spring, all summer, all fall camp. I just think it speaks volumes about this young man's character just as a person. I mean, obviously the football piece, they expect him to play for them this year. He's going to be a factor for Notre Dame this year. I'm not acting like he's some, borderline walk-on player. He's a good football player. But as I said, it's not a given he's going to start for Notre Dame. I mean, from what we've seen, it's been primarily Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison starting in those 2 spots. He's going to play a ton. He may end up starting at times. I think he's going to, I won't get into that right now, but I just think it shows great leadership. And then you want linemen to be captains, Trevor. And the 4th captain that Notre Dame announced was Billy Schrauth.
We've been, especially if you guys listen to our show on Saturday, we've been extremely high on Billy Schrauth lately. And he's somebody that really came onto the scene really this offseason and stepped into a bigger role than what some of us may have anticipated. We expected his play on the field to be raised, but he slowly started to become a vocal leader. I noticed it when the early enrollee freshman got here. And his name was being talked, like referenced in interviews consistently of, hey, you're young, you're finding your footing, you're getting used to being at college. Who are you kind of turning to, and of course they talked about linking arms with each other because you're going through being an early enrollee. You're still supposed to be in high school, but you're practicing with Notre Dame, fresh off of a national championship appearance. And the two names that we consistently heard was Ashton Craig and Billy Schrouth as, two of the leaders of that offensive line unit, taking them under their wing and kind of helping them get adjusted to that life in college. And so I'm really happy to hear that Billy Schrouth was a captain. He fought through a lot of adversity last season with, he got his position changed. He got hurt. He went to right guard. And then we started the season at right guard, gets hurt, comes back at left guard. And then he's able to help mature Anthony Knapp along in that process. And like we've talked about, I don't think that it's a coincidence that 54's level of play started to take major strides last season when he got to line up alongside of a veteran. So I think that that's a little bit of a microcosm of Billy Schrouth's impact on the offensive line as a whole. And I'm happy he got named a captain this season.
The next captain that was named is probably the second most no-brainer on this list, and that's Don Schuler. And again, we're going in order of which Notre Dame released the captains. If I'm correct in my thought process here, I think they also went in alphabetical order, right? B, H, P, S, S, SC, SH, and then W. So I think that's the order of their release, not like vote getting. But you go to Don Schuler, Trev, and anyone that watched him last year kind of saw this one coming. Obviously, on the field, he's a heck of a player. Adon just made a very smooth transition in the starting lineup last year. We go into spring of it, last spring, so it would be March of 2024, April 2024, and there's a lot of buzz about Rod Hurd, brought in from the transfer portal. He's had back-to-back years of almost 1,000 snaps and over 80 tackles. He's coming off over 80 tackles, really good football player. And he's not there in the spring. So Adon steps in and is like, no, I'll take hold of this. And Rod Hurd had a really good year for Notre Dame as part of the rotation of safety, but it was Adon and Xavier were the guys, and then Rod was part of the rotation. But it also became very early. It became very apparent early on, Trev, that Adon had leadership traits. And I've shared the story of the fall camp practice we were at. I think it was a fall camp practice where another player on defense made a mistake, and Adon just like a beeline to that guy, got right in his face, and is like not in an aggressive manner, but it's like, making sure that guy knows what to do, and great communicator on the back end, and a guy that they expect big things from on the field as well. So this one was not. I mean, honestly, Trev, you could go back to when he was in high school. It's like, this is the kind of kid that comes to Notre Dame, and if he's a starter, becomes a captain. Like that was, National Honor Society, great student, great family, hard worker, great attitude, leader of the recruiting class, but he always did it behind the scenes. Back then, he's a kid that I can tell you with pretty good certainty got offered a pretty big deal to jump in the portal, didn't even think twice about it. No, I'm going to Notre Dame. Like, what? I don't care about all that. I'm here for different reasons. On the field and off the field, it is a no-brainer that Adon Schuler was named a captain of this team. Just when we talk work ethic, character, toughness, mindset, clutch gene, production, all of it. Adon literally checks every single box that you could think of that you want a captain to check. So it's still exciting to see. Like, we knew Drake was going to be a captain. We knew Adon was going to be a captain. But then to see it, it's still a pretty cool moment for those young men. And then for us, to see who we think we know who the leaders are, but then to see those guys emerge was pretty cool. And then the obviously with Emil Wagner is the last guy that they released as the sixth captain. And we were sitting there like, okay, like once Adon was announced, we're like, okay, are they going to go more than six? Because we're sitting there thinking maybe this guy. And then it was announced that Emil Wagner was going to be a captain.
He was one of the other obvious choices for me. I mean, he entered this offseason as one of your most, if not, you could argue, most experienced offensive lineman to this point. Was the only one last season that started, played, and finished all 16 games. Led the entire roster in total snaps last year with 973. And he returns this year, and ready to take that next jump. He's one of the offensive linemen that has gotten a lot of offseason recognition of, Lindy Sports ranked him as one of the best returning offensive tackles in the country. PFF did the same thing. He was getting named on several different, preseason award watch lists. I think he was also an Athlon Sports preseason All-American, I believe. He made one of the preseason All-American lists as a second teamer. But I go and I look at Emil Wagner, and everything that I've heard from him this offseason, he embodies what Marcus Freeman's idea is of a captain of a football team. And somebody asked him a question, I think it was about a week ago during a media session. And they asked if he was going to, not elect himself, but put his name in consideration to be a team captain this year. And he said, yeah, I'm definitely going to stand up. I'm going to put my name in the hat, but I don't need a C on my chest to lead. And that is exactly what embodies who Emil Wagner is as a person, who he is as a player, and what Marcus Freeman has as an idea of who a team captain is. And I think that's something that we can say about all of these guys that got elected team captains this season. It's not just about wearing the C on your chest. It's, hey, I'm going to step up and be a leader for, my position room, or for this player, or for this unit, or for this side of the ball. And it's just a natural progression that you are now elected a captain and a leader of the entire team. So I'm really happy to see that it was Emil Wagner. He was the last one to be named, just to Brian's point about alphabetical order, but I think of Emil Wagner as another one of those no-brainer choices. I knew an offensive lineman was going to be named a captain. It was just kind of a question of who and how many, and I'm happy he was one of them.
The surprises, Trev, we talked about the guys that were part of the list. None of them were shockers, even though there weren't guys that you and I would have predicted. None of them were shockers. I was surprised. I'm not overly surprised that Jaden Greathouse isn't named a captain because he's a true junior. You've got two other captain caliber players that are much older at the position. I think with Jaden, it's just we want him to lead in other ways and just go play ball. I was a little surprised Jeremiah Love wasn't named a captain because he has received a lot of praise from the coaching staff of his work ethic and his leadership. I wonder if maybe I'm just curious as to why that is, why he wasn't named a captain. I wonder if part of it is like, look, we just want Jeremiah to focus on being Jeremiah. And we don't need him getting in front of a room and doing this and doing that. Because the three leaders they named on offense are all not just do it by how you work, but more vocal leaders, more get in front of the room type of guys. And perhaps with Jeremiah, it's like, look, he's the leader of that room. He's the guy that when Jeremiah speaks in a huddle, people are going to listen. We don't need to put the C on his chest. But I still kind of expected him to be named a captain. And then defensively, I can't say that there was any surprises for who wasn't named. I think the potential captains on defense we talked about. You and I kind of thought they might go with 4 total players, which is why we only had 2 predicted captains. If you're going to go to third, I mean, I think Donovan Heinisch is as good of a pick as any. Yeah, I don't know that there was anybody else on defense that was going to be a guy that maybe a Josh Burnham, maybe a junior Tui Alamaka as potential captain candidates. But because there's still a lot of youth on defense, and that you don't really have anybody else that you'd think about, Donovan Heinisch is obviously a great pick in that regard and a guy that has the captain traits. Anybody else for you that you kind of thought, boy, I'm a little surprised that guy wasn't named a captain? Or you can build on Jeremiah if he was the only one that surprised you, but feel free to take it wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, Jeremiah was probably the only one. I think Eli Raridan as well. Of course, I have to get my tight end talk in for today.
I knew you were going to go there. I love it.
Had to. But a little surprised about Eli Raridan. I mean, he battled a lot of injuries. I think that he's one of those players that kind of embodies what it means to be at Notre Dame. He was okay assuming his role as kind of the number 2, number 3 tight end for his first 3 years at school. Battled through injuries, but never missed enough time to ever earn a red shirt. Now this year, he kind of steps up as the premier guy. And from everything that we've heard, he's kind of living up to that expectation so far throughout camp. The real journey begins on August 31st and then throughout the rest of the regular season and into the postseason. But I could see him maybe, but I'm not pounding my fist on the table saying I can't believe that he didn't. I mean, I don't even know if he threw his name in the hat to be. Mm-hmm. But I'll say this about Jeremiah Love. You mentioned something that I think played a factor in this. And I don't know if he's somebody that has to have a C on his chest to gain a lot of attention when he speaks. I think by nature, he's a very stoic person. I mean, he talked about it on RG3's podcast. He was like, hey, like, I'm not the big rah-rah guy. And then Riley Leonard joked with him and was like, dude, I hear you talking on the field. You definitely let it go when we're between the white lines. But I do think that if something needs to be said and Jeremiah Love has to say it, I don't think he's going to need a C on his chest to gain that level of attention. And so that was really the only one. Outside of that, on defense, I think they nailed it, honestly. And let me be clear, I also love the offensive captain selections too. It was just I was a little surprised to see it in what is probably going to be his last year in South Bend. I thought that he was going to be one of the captains, but I'm not devastated that he's not.
Right. When I think of captains, Trevor, I think this is why it matters, right? And we're going to talk quarterbacks next. I think it's even more important in a year like this where you don't have an established quarterback. Whether Riley Leonard was the team captain or not, I don't care what Marcus Freeman said. There was no quarterback battle last year, nor should there have been. Every single day and every single rep of fall camp should have been geared towards getting Riley Leonard ready to run the offense. And you had that sort of established leader of a otherwise pretty young offense. There's a bunch of transfers and then a bunch of new guys. There really weren't a lot of captain candidates. You could say, okay, maybe Rocco or Pat Coogan could have been candidates, but they weren't even starters at the beginning of the year. This year, it's the opposite. You have a lot of established players on offense. I mean, you've got 3 named captains, but you have 4 players that have been college football captains on your offense when you include Malachi Fields, who was a captain last year at Virginia. And, of course, Jeremiah Love, who's going to provide leadership and has provided leadership according to the coaches and everything that we hear from teammates and people around the program, whether he's got the C on his chest or not. I think Jadarian Price has some of that lead by example type of mentality. Jordan Faison, obviously, with all the things he has to do on and off the field as a 2-sport star. It's important, and it was not a given necessarily, but it's important to see so much of the veteran leadership emerge in a year where you don't have an established quarterback. And as of today, publicly, and then I say this because I don't know if they've announced it to the players if there's a quarterback decision, but we don't know of one. You don't have a proven quarterback, and you don't want that quarterback being worried about leading. You want that quarterback being worried about what's my check pre-snap, what's my read post-snap, get the ball where it needs to go. I don't want them worried about all that other kind of stuff. I think it's very important that leadership emerges, not just with the 3 captains, but with the Malachi Fields, with the Jaden Greathouse, with the Jeremiah Love, with the Jadarian Price, with the Eli Raridan that you mentioned. There's plenty of veteran leadership so the quarterbacks can just kind of sit back. And we'll talk about quarterbacks more in depth next. But I think it's important that you have that leadership because I think it does take a little bit of the burden off of whoever's named the starting quarterback that, hey, man, you don't got to worry about leading right now. You lead by doing your job. Let Emil talk to the refs. That's one of the deals of a captain. Let Emil or Billy or Will walk out to midfield to do the coin toss. You worry about getting yourself mentally ready to play. You worry about doing your job and running this offense. I think that if you were in a similar situation last year, I'd be very concerned about the leadership on offense. Like if you didn't have an established quarterback leader last year, like it is now, I'd be very concerned about last year's team. This year, it's just not needed because of the makeup of this team is different because of there's now a lot more veterans and because you added 2 captains to your team in Malachi Fields and Will Pauling, you can now just take some of that burden off the quarterbacks, which I think is very important.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. These captains this year kind of have big shoes to fill. The captains last year, their team went 14-2. And there were several moments throughout last season where the team kind of had to turn to their captains and look and say, hey, where do we go from here? A lot of the great teams that we've seen at Notre Dame in the past have been player-driven. And yes, I love what this new regime is under Marcus Freeman and who he has on his coaching staff. But in moments after Northern Illinois, you needed your captains to kind of get everybody together. We saw it going into the postseason. Benjamin Morrison in that captains meeting that we got to see in the Here Come the Irish documentary, he brought to light some of the issues that were going on in the locker room. It's like, hey, we haven't played IU yet. People are already talking about making a trip down to Louisiana to play in the Sugar Bowl. We got to get this figured out. And so I love that this year the captains are a little bit more divvied up. You had one offensive captain last year and 4 on defense. And now I think organically you're going to have a lot more leadership. But like I said, look, the group of captains last year set a pretty high bar. You go 14-2 and you have a national championship appearance. They're off to a good start. Notre Dame's over-under on FanDuel right now. It's 10.5 wins, which is a good spot to be in. And based on some of our projections, we think that that's kind of the bare minimum of what this team is capable of. But these captains, now that it's more even split of 50-50, I think it puts this team in a good spot to where now you're down in Miami and you don't have to rely on the transfer being who you thought he was. You have multiple people on offense that you can turn to. It's like, hey, what do we need to do to get us going? And to your point, other leadership will start to emerge as the season goes on.
I didn't even think about this, Trev. That's a great point you brought up about the disparity in captain type leadership last year. You go into last year's season, you've got a brand new starting offensive line. You've got a true freshman at left tackle, a redshirt freshman at left guard. Your center and right guard have 6 career combined starts, and your right tackle's redshirt sophomore who's never played a meaningful down of football. You've got 2 young guys that are relatively unproven at running back. You've got a bunch of transfers at wide receiver with 2 true sophomores at wide receiver. And, the only guy that was like in a position of leadership from an age standpoint was Mitchell Evans, who, I don't know, was like a guy that was a captain type of guy. He was more of just to do your job. He was also battling back from injury and dealing with a lot of that stuff. If Riley didn't emerge as the leader, you didn't have a lot of natural leadership in your starting lineup. You could argue your best leader last year began the season as a backup offensive lineman in Pat Coogan. Then you look on the other side of the ball, you had Jack Kaiser as a captain. You had Riley Mills as a captain. You had Xavier Watts as a captain. I think Jordan Clark, as a 6-year senior, brought a veteran presence. I believe he was also a captain at Arizona State in 2023. So you add him as a captain type of player. Howard Cross is a guy that some people viewed that way. You had RJ Open as a 6-year senior, not a captain type of guy, but a veteran presence. There was a lot more of that captain element on the defense last year. Now you have even more of that on offense. I mean, we mentioned the 3 guys on defense. I don't know that anybody else is really in the captain world. You could maybe say Leonard Moore, but you're not going to name a sophomore, a team captain. I don't care how good he is. You've got guys kind of in rooms, but where a lot of the established leadership is with this football team is on offense right now. Not just the 3 named captains, but as we mentioned, Malachi Fields. You look at Eli Rader. I mean, guy's married now. Like, talk about like he's grown. I mean, he's in the real world now. He just happens to have another year of football left. You talk about Jeremiah Love. You talk about Jadarian Price. You've seen a bit of a flip to a degree, but the defense, on the other hand, doesn't have the lack of experience and the lack of leadership that last year's offense had. It's just not as much. Yeah, no brainer, no doubt that guy's going to be a leader and a captain as you have on offense. I forgot to mention Jaden Greathouse when I was also listing off my other leadership type of players. But that's the thing, is you start listing them off on offense, you're going to run out. You mentioned Ashton Craig is a guy that we have heard a lot from other players, younger players. Like, who do you look up to? They talk about Ashton Craig. There's 9-10 guys on offense you look at and say, yeah, I could see that guy being a leader of this offense, like one of the leaders. And where last year was like, it's kind of one that you knew. I mean, you hoped maybe Bo Collins could provide a veteran leadership in that room. And I think Bo did in certain ways. Jaden Greathouse started to emerge that way a little bit last year, but there really wasn't a lot of that outside of Riley Leonard in your starting lineup until Pat Coogan got put back in the lineup after injuries kind of shook things up a little bit.
Last thing I'll bring up about the captains that's also really promising, and it goes to your point, bringing up the age of how young everybody was last year. Outside of Will Pauling, everybody that was elected captain this year for Notre Dame has the ability to return in 2026. And that is where your leadership is. That's really, I can't remember the last time the majority of Notre Dame captains had the year to be 2-year captains.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, really impressive, because when I think about this team and how far they came last year and their inexperience that they had to rely on those sophomores. They had to rely on a bunch of redshirt sophomores. Now those guys are going into redshirt junior years, senior years academically. You got guys like Drake Bowen, who's going into his junior year. And so it just goes to show the level of leadership that you have, but it also kind of breaks that stereotype of, there are some people that believe that captains need to only be seniors or only be a quarterback, it just goes to show you that this team can show multiple multiple different ways to win and get things done. But listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. We are getting ready to break down, you guys guessed it, there's been some talk about it this offseason, not that much, but we're getting ready to talk about the Notre Dame quarterback battle. But before we get there, you know what to do. Please be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. But the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.
Before you jump into that, Trev, we did have a super chat that just kind of came up here at the end from James Salumi about captains. He says, I think Jadarian could have been one. Defense has lots of money offers to go. Definitely had lots of money offers to go be RB1 somewhere else, but probably more of a leader by action. Yeah, James, I think I don't disagree with that at all. I think I'd mentioned Jadarian as a potential guy like that earlier. I think that's one of the things I love about this offense is there are so many guys that are just kind of do your job. That's why, look, the offense is not dominating right now in fall camp. I'm not surprised by it, but I'm not worried about it at all. And it's because of kind of what we've talked about here during this, during this breakdown of the leaders. But I do want to thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate that very much, James.
All right, Brian, getting into part 2 of today's show on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. I don't know if some of you guys have heard yet, up in the air if you have, but Notre Dame has an ongoing quarterback battle. And I guess if you've been on vacation somewhere for the last 4 to 5 months and somewhere without internet, Notre Dame is in a heated quarterback competition between Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr. What we're going to do in part 2 of today's show is we're going to break down some different aspects of this battle. It's still ongoing. We're going to give our overall thoughts on the situation. We're going to talk about some comments from Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock that were made in yesterday's press conference. And we're going to continue talking about this battle. But Brian, when we look at this, it's still ongoing. We've seen other schools kind of start to name who their starter is going to be. We saw Syracuse do that today. We saw Ohio State officially name Julian Sain today. Notre Dame has yet to do so, but you and I both have a feeling it's going to happen here relatively soon.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman in the press conference on Saturday was obviously asked a lot of questions about the quarterback, and this is his comment after the scrimmage. He goes, "We're still in competition. We'll go back and evaluate today's practice today, make a decision. We've got to make a decision here soon. I don't know when we'll make it. I don't know. I don't want to put a timeline on it, but they've both been playing really, really well. We've got 2 guys that have been battling all camp, and today was no different. There were some good things and things that we've got to get improved, and that's pretty much the story of fall camp. Is 2 talented guys battling for the job. Some days you think, okay, Kenny's ready to take it over. The next day, CJ's ready to take it over. And there's been that back and forth, and neither guy has really seized that role just yet, in my opinion, by pulling away from the other one. Is that good? Is that bad? We'll talk about that later. But I think we're at the point now, Trev, where we're less than 2 weeks away from the opener. This is a guess on my part. This is not intel. This isn't something I've been told. I assume they're going to get part of today off, or at least have a more of a walkthrough type of practice today, since they did have the big scrimmage yesterday. It was a live scrimmage yesterday. And I think today is the day the staff sits down, talks it all through. Again, my opinion, I'm not giving intel. My opinion, based on how this works in the past and looking at it from coaching standpoint, I think you're going to see them sit down today. And when they get back to practice tomorrow, what I think will be more of a full practice tomorrow, again, my opinion, you're going to see them have named a starter with the team. Now, will that be named publicly? That I don't know. I have no clue. We're not going to get Marcus Freeman again until next week. I think a week from today is the next time we get Marcus Freeman for a press conference. They may wait until then. I think it'll leak out. But if they wait till Monday, it's going to leak out. If they have like the next 2 days, insert players taking all the 1 reps back-to-back days. Now, there will be some stuff that'll probably leak out after the first day. If they're not told, they'll still have that leak out. Like I had somebody said, yeah, so-and-so was at practice on this day last week, and, Kenny took all the 1 reps. And I said, yeah, I know someone that was at the Wednesday and Friday practice, and CJ took all the 1 reps. I'm like, that's what they're doing. They're rotating days, but, everybody gets their little bit of intel and they want to run with it. But I do think we're at the point now where they're going to make a decision. I think they have to make a decision. I don't think you can go into Miami week and you're still splitting reps. That's going to be because here's my fear. They said in the press conference, Marcus Freeman said it and Mike Denbrock said it, we're not playing two quarterbacks. Now, what that means is two quarterbacks in a game. They're not going to rotate quarterbacks in that. They're not going to go all Steve Spurrier from the from the 2000s and rotate quarterbacks the way that some people have done. And to me, it's a disservice to whoever you name the starter if he doesn't get a good 2 full weeks of this is now my team. Like, I don't know that that's the best thing to do, but I also am sympathetic if they are sitting there like, guys, we don't know who to go with. That's the concern that you have. But you've got to sit down and make a decision. Say, here's who we're going with, and is it the things that Kenny brings to the table? Is it the things CJ brings to the table? Are we making a decision just for Miami? And then we'll kind of reevaluate how that goes. And then we've got an extra week of prep before Texas A&M. Because you're going to have basically 4 weeks of practice before you play Texas A&M. And then there's that little old Miami game right in the middle of it. I don't know what they're going to do, but you're getting to the point now, Trev, where you gotta kind of step up and make a decision. Yeah, I think part of the struggle is I don't believe that everybody's on the same page of who that should be, which isn't overly surprising when you have two talented quarterbacks. I think that's part of what makes this difficult. If they walked into the office yesterday and everybody was like, it should be this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and they were all on the same page, I think this decision is over. I think the fact that it's not over is because I don't think that everybody, and it's not in a bad way. That's normal when you've got two talented players going for a job. There's going to be people, hey, I'm kind of more like a dual threat guy. I think it should be this guy. I like more of a pocket with this guy. It's not a negative. There's dissension in the staff. It's nothing like that. It's just, not everybody's going to have the same opinion when you've got two players like this battling for the job. But you got to be able to sit down and say, okay, let's put it on the table. Who moves the offense the best? Who gives us the best chance? I think it should be who gives us the best chance to beat Miami and who gives us the best chance to win game 15 or 16, depending on what your seeding is. I think it has to be both. You can't be too short-sighted that you look past that, but you also can't be so far looking into the future that you don't have a guy on the field that can maybe win your first couple games. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's the criteria that they have to look at, and that's what makes this decision a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard Marcus Freeman in press conferences. We heard him say it at the end of spring. We heard him say it at the beginning of spring, the beginning of fall camp. We heard him say it yesterday that, you don't want to put a timeline on a quarterback battle like this. And while I can be sympathetic to that, and I agree with the big picture ideology of what that is, at some point, you do get to the point where it's like, okay, we do play Miami in X amount of days. We're inching closer and closer to game week. Thank goodness. Shout out to our girl Karen. I saw her pop in here at the beginning of the show today and say, hey, 13 days. I think she said Ben Minnick / CJ Carr days until Notre Dame kicks off against Miami. But at some point, a decision will have to be made. And while I understand not putting a deadline on it, to not rush anything, to make sure the thought process can be well thought out and you don't make a rash decision if you're not ready, it does come to the point where it's like, okay, you can't go into game week and give both people reps on the first team and see how they do in a week of game prep. That's just going to make it even more difficult for whoever is elected starter because that's reps that they're missing out on. I'm sure the coaching staff is aware of that. But it does beg the question, Bryan, and you brought it up, with it taking this long, and I think that there's two trains of thought here, but I wanted to get your opinion on this first. Is it a good or a bad thing that it's this much up in the air?
So there's two ways of answering this question, Trevor. The first is, without any context, it can be good or bad. Like there's no, it's always good, it's always bad. There's scenarios in which it could be a good thing. There's scenarios in which it could be a bad thing. We don't know the answer to whether it is good or bad. And here's where it could be a good thing. You got two talented quarterbacks that are just both balling out. And they're both still making their mistakes, to be expected, but they're both show big time ability. And one of the bits of intel that I've heard, and I think I've put this on the board, but it's like one day you're just like, oh man, that 13 is killing it today. Like, okay, I think he's starting to pull ahead. And then the next day, 8 goes out there and just kills it and has a great day. And he's the guy that wins it. And there's kind of been this back and forth between the two of them. And then there's days where, 8's really struggling and 13's having a heck of a day. Next day, 8's having a heck of a day and 13 is struggling. There's been those kind of ups and downs that has made this a bit challenging, and that may be perceived as a negative, but I don't know that it necessarily is, Trev, because again, it's two guys that are very talented that the coaching staff has a lot of trust in. Like there's been a lot of BS stuff out there from people just looking to make a name for themselves that are criticizing, like CJ Mindset's attitude and that nonsense. If anything, every source I've talked to said that I actually think CJ has more of the leadership traits that they want. And then there's like I've said before, and I've said on the board, I think that Marcus Freeman views Kenny Minchey as the safe pick. And then people will take that and be like, oh, he's Drew Pine 2022. And I'm like, no, that's not what I said. It's there's everybody's trying to take, here's my guy. And so I want to tear down the guy that's not my guy. And I think that's nonsense because in the eyes of the coaching staff, they have two very talented players that they love and respect and think are capable of winning a lot of football games. But you've got to pick one. Like that's where it has to be. And so if there's faith in the two, I don't see how that can be a bad thing. Here's the other very important piece of this. There's always going to be players that prefer this guy or the other guy. That's human nature. The problem is when you get to the point in time where you have players who are like, I don't want to play for that guy. And that's where the locker room can get fractured from everybody that I've talked to. And I won't say who. I was about to start naming like types of people, but I won't say who. But a lot of sources that have connections with the players in the locker room. Even the guys that, hey, I prefer Kenny, I prefer CJ. It's always followed, but I don't care. They can both ball. We love both of them. I don't care. I think they just want somebody to get picked. I think that's really what it boils down to. So I don't think that the decision is going to fracture anybody. The only negative then is, and here is the potential negative. This is the only potential negative that I see, Trev. The longer this goes on, and I had no problem, and they shouldn't have named a guy before the scrimmage on Sunday. And that was a big issue that I had with the intel that I put out on Friday. Is that there's no need to rush this decision, but there's also now the danger of letting it drag on too far. And I think that's why we're in a 24 to 48 hour window where a decision's got to be made, because that number one guy is going to need all the reps and all the work in getting prepared to go out and play Miami on August 31st. So now, no problem with how it's gone so far. None. Two guys battling it out, two talented guys, but now you got to pick one. You got to sit down and make your decision and say, this is the guy we're rolling with because you're starting Miami prep this week. And I think now a decision has to get made. Up until now, fine with it. But we're in that it's money time now, Trev. That's my 2 cents.
I echo the same thing. You brought up a really good point earlier talking about how, when 13 has a great day, then 8 might have a day where he's not as on. And then it's vice versa almost 24 hours later. You need to name a guy to try to nix some of those problems. It is hard to be consistent when you fluctuate in between first team, second team, but then, hey, I'll take first team, inside run reps. And then so-and-so will take, first team 7-on-7 reps. And then you're fluctuating in between. Okay. You see some like hybrid first teams out there from time to time. So I get that. When I look at this, there's two trains of thought that people tend to sort themselves into, two different camps. One of them is it's so neck and this is the side that I think that it should be aired on. But you have two talented guys. Nobody separated themselves because the competition level is that high. That's a situation that you want to be in if you're a coaching staff, if you're a fan base. You can't play both sides of the coin and saying, I see it on Twitter all the time. Notre Dame's quarterback room from a talent and ceiling perspective could go up against anybody. But then some of those same people are like, yeah, but since CJ hasn't pulled away yet, I think he's overrated. You can't play both sides of that coin. But to that point, there's another camp that believes that since nobody separated themselves, the coaching staff is faced with this dilemma of, okay, do you just pick the lesser of two evils? And I don't believe that to be true. It's just each quarterback has their own strengths, and they've played at such a high level, and they're different enough that I do believe the decision matters of who you go with. Different as in styles of play, styles of leadership, how you go about things. I don't believe that CJ Carr is the next Jack Cohn, and I don't believe that Kenny Minchie's the next Michael Vick, even though that's how it's been painted from an athletic trait standpoint on social media. But it does matter who you go with, because there are different styles of their play, but you need to let them get to the point where they can get their feet under them and have multiple days in a row of taking first team reps, because Miami's not going to care that hey, sorry guys, you didn't get our best today because we've just been rotating up until like last Thursday.
Yeah.
They don't care. You got to get it figured out.
And here's a quote from Mike Denbrock that kind of leads to why you need to get it figured out sooner rather than later. He made this comment. He goes, I think it's going to be important that whoever wins the job, we play to the strengths of who they are and not put them in compromising situations, especially too early in the season. You know what I mean? But I don't think it'll change a bunch. And that's the thing, is that they're different, but it's more tweaks on the edges, not, okay, we got to put a completely different offense in because this guy's the starter. He says, but there are some subtle strengths and weaknesses and differences that you have to be aware of when you're making a plan, and obviously highlights the strengths of and try to diminish as many of the weaknesses as you can. This is another reason why a decision needs to be made soon. It's for Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli as well, because once you make that decision, that guy is now who you're building your offense around. And you need to be able to give more looks, more reps to say, now let's really get into the tailored part of this battle. And that may mean you need to change your protections to a certain degree. Maybe there are some concepts that can't, your pass game is going to be the same. Same concepts are going to be run. So let's say you got 20 concepts you're going to take into a game. Well, if CJ's the starting quarterback, these 5-6 concepts are going to dominate your call sheet, because he just throws the heck out of those 5-6 concepts. He's super comfortable with it. He throws that ball great. He reads it great. Kenny doesn't necessarily maybe read those as great. Kenny reads these 5 or 6 concepts really good that maybe CJ's not as good at. And so we're going to rep the heck out of those and get good at those because he reads it right. He throws it well. He's comfortable with it. And Mike Denbrock's got to learn that too. I mean, we talked about this last year when we go into the Stanford game, and we're talking about it in the postgame show. This is a completely different offense than what we saw the first 5 weeks. Because now Mike Denbrock has a comfort level in knowing what Riley Leonard can do. It won't take 5-6 weeks this time, because these guys both had all spring, where he didn't have Riley last spring, and he had them both all last season. It's not that. But until that guy is the guy and all the pressure's on him, because I think up until now, all the pressure's been on CJ Carr. Because not a lot of people thought Kenny Minchie was going to win the job from an external pressure standpoint. CJ has been the guy that all the pressure's on. Well, if Kenny, for example, is named the starter, now it's a whole different type of pressure. You won the job. Now all eyes are on you. And he's got to be able to have as much time as possible to prepare for that. Because right now he's preparing to compete. Now it's about, okay, dude, you're the guy. And then Mike Denbrock would need time to say, okay, now I got to really tailor this next couple weeks to doing what Kenny does well. Opposite thing is also true. If CJ Carr is the guy, it's okay, now the pressure really turns up on him. How do we now tailor this to where we can get him in a good mental place and a good physical place to execute the offense at a high level, still make some of the big time throws you can make, but maybe there's some things we can do to protect him a little bit in ways that we're not doing right now, because we're letting it all fly because we're in a battle. And now we game plan to it. And we're going to have to alter the protections a little bit, because he's very athletic, but he's a different style of scrambler runner than Kenny is. These concepts he really likes. So you're going to need time as a player to get your mind into that space of, now I'm the guy. And then Mike Denbrock's going to have to have the time to tailor the offense to fit that guy in a way that I mentioned. You're not recreating this guy's not starting, so we need a brand new run game package. We need to do, it's not that, but there are going to be adjustments that you have to now game plan for, where in the last 3 weeks, it's been, we're running stuff and they're both having to run it because this is what we're building as an offense. Now it's like, well, yeah, CJ killed that. He crushed that. He was great at that, but Kenny not so much. So maybe that's not as big of a package moving forward if Kenny's the guy, or vice versa. Kenny was great at this, CJ not so much. So we've got to adjust it, go this way. And that's more of the tailoring to a specific game plan that you're not doing in the first 3 weeks. You're just building your offense. This is the stuff we like. This is what we do. Now you say, okay, now we're building to something, a specific game plan, a specific defense that does coverages that are different than we do off defensively, looking at it from, I'm saying like we as in the Notre Dame coaches looking at their defense. There are blitzes that they do that are different than what we do. Their personnel strengths are different than ours. Now we got to tailor all the things we're doing to play that. And if you're still trying to also then tailor between two quarterbacks, I just think it makes it that much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything that you said, and it just goes to further your point of how close this quarterback competition truly has been. I mean, it's even starting to reflect in like sports books, legitimately. I mean, FanDuel for the last, 2 months had CJ Carr ranked ahead of Jeremiah Love in Heisman odds. He was at plus 3,100 and Jeremiah Love was at plus 4,000. Today, it is now switched, and Jeremiah Love and CJ Carr are tied in Heisman odds on FanDuel at plus 4,000 apiece. And so I think now,
which means CJ went down. Jeremiah's the same. CJ went down, right?
Yep. Because there still has yet to. Now, if a starter gets named and it's CJ Carr, I do expect him to jump up drastically. But CJ Carr was at plus 3,100 odds before he was even named the starter. Since it hasn't happened yet, I think that's why he dropped down a little bit. But then I also think the same for Kenny Minchey. I think if Kenny Minchey gets named the starter, other teams and other sports books, betting services, things like that, they are taking notice to Notre Dame a little bit. And I could very well see Kenny Minchey being one of those like dark horse type of candidates to be named in the Heisman odds on something like a FanDuel if he gets named the starter. So I just think all of those ingredients just kind of play a factor into, one, everybody's restlessness, mine included, as to why a starter hasn't been named yet, mostly because I just want to know. Mm-hmm. But two, to all the points that you said about you need to start getting your guy ready. Couldn't agree more.
So let's wrap this up, Trev, and talk about let's kind of talk about who we think is going to get named the quarterback. And I've heard so many different things. I had a guy text me last night, "Hey, I'm hearing it's going to be Kenny." Okay. I had another guy text me last night and say, "Hey, I'm hearing it's going to be CJ. Heard CJ outplayed him the last 3 practices." Or, "Hey, I heard CJ's been better the last 3 practices." I've talked to maybe no less than a half dozen people, probably more, about the scrimmage yesterday. And honestly, Trev, it's 50-50 on who thought they played better yesterday. And I had one guy who's been a pro Minchey guy tell me he thought CJ was better. And he just said he made more big throws and he just felt the offense more consistently moved well with him. And then I had another, pro Minchey guy tell me, "Oh, definitely Kenny was a better guy." Another pro CJ guy, CJ was a better guy. Like, I don't know how much we're going to learn from that. But there's been some things that I have learned, and I put an intel piece up on Friday about where I think Marcus Freeman wants to go with this decision. And he made a comment that I thought was very telling. And I don't know if it'll come across the same way it did during the press conference. He goes, but he was talking about, for me, more important than anything, like, I don't want to just sit here and watch the outcome, good or bad, and say, blame the quarterback. It's like, what decision was he supposed to make, and did he make the right decision? Then you look and say, okay, was the ball good? Was the protection right? All those different things that are on his plate. But that is more important to me than anything. It's about decision-making, because there's no different aspects that go into the outcome of a play, right? It's easy to, I always say it, we'll give the quarterback credit when things are good. We'll blame him if things are bad. But the one thing they control is their decision-making and the ability to get everybody on the same page. And I think what we're seeing here is there's a difference between the mindset of someone who is a longtime defensive-minded coach, defensive coordinator, guy that looks at things a certain way, a guy that for all the praise we've given Marcus Freeman, we've criticized him in the past for really conservative view on how to attack offensively. Don't put the defense in a bad spot. Defensive coaches always look at it that way. Whereas an offensive coach is going to be like, I have a great defense, so I can take more chances because I have a defense that'll bail us out. And it's been fascinating. Marcus Freeman's aggressiveness when it comes to fake punts and going for it on 4th down, that at times he's lacked when it comes to throwing the football, which has kind of been interesting. And so when you talk to people, the one thing that's been constant from the people that I've talked to in fall camp, and it's been a lot of different people, and Trev, you know who the people I talk to are. It's This guy, CJ Carr, makes big time throws. You're just like, that's unreal. And man, he can put the ball in places that nobody else on the roster can. Part of that mindset also gets into some trouble. He'll turn it over more than Kenny will. For the record, anyone telling you that one quarterback is struggling with turnovers and the other isn't is lying to you. Both quarterbacks have had some struggles turning the ball over, but you talk to enough people that really know the game and don't have agendas, you're like, dude, some of those picks are just like, he was open when the ball left his hand. And then Leonard Moore just closes on it and picks it off. Or Mark Zachary, who I've been told is like a pick-a-day guy. Like if a practice ends and Mark Zachary doesn't have a pick in some kind of team or 7-on-7 period, you're surprised. We saw that in the video they put out last week when Mark had a pick 6. That was of Kenny Minchey, by the way. It wasn't of CJ Carr. But it's more so Kenny is doing more of the, if it's not there, dump it down. Manage the offense. And Kenny's very calm. He's very steady. CJ's a little bit fiery. And when you listen to Marcus Freeman talk, it just comes across very much to me like he would rather see the quarterback take the check down than, or maybe take the scramble, take that first read package, as opposed to the guy that's like, I'm going to try to fit this ball into a tighter window. Now, that can be dumb sometimes, and that is necessary sometimes. You want a quarterback that's got some of that aggressiveness. Kenny has had that in the past as well. My question is, has Kenny overcorrected or not? If he hasn't, then we're golden if Kenny's a starter. And this is what we said all summer. If CJ's a starter, then I think the offense is going to be great. But if Kenny beats him out, what does that say about how well Kenny's playing? My whole thing with this is if Kenny wins the job because he's still Kenny, but he's more consistent. That was his issue in the past, was consistency. If we're still getting big play Kenny with the consistency, then okay, let's roll. But if it's okay, Kenny's not taking as many chances, he's not doing this, he's just checking it down, he's just kind of playing it safe a little bit more, and then he can run around. That's where you get into a concern. It goes back to what I've always said. I don't care who starts. I care about the process. I care about why you're starting a specific player. If Kenny's the starter, you got to allow him to then go out and make his own mistakes. And my concern is if you're overvaluing in practice turnovers, then what are you saying to the guy that wins the job in that instance? I worry about that. And I thought Gino Guidugli had the perfect comment last week where he said, listen, I don't get bothered by interceptions in practice. That's part of the learning process. Now, what you don't want to see as a coach, and this is me talking, you want to see a guy making the same turnover all the time. That's where you get concerned. You want to learn from it. But what you also don't want to do on the opposite side is so overcorrect, and we used to criticize Brian Kelly for this, so overcorrect that you're now sort of taking away some of the gunslinger from Kenny or CJ. Whoever wins, you don't want them so afraid of turning it over that they make a mistake. Because somebody says, well, one player's I've heard Kenny's taken more sacks than CJ. CJ turns the ball over. My thing is a third down sack that goes -7 that you then punt it 40 yards is not a whole lot different than a third and 7 post route that you forced into traffic that gets picked off 40 yards down the field. A defensive coach won't see it that way. Defensive coach sees turnover. You know what I mean? And that's the concern I have, to be honest with you, about this decision. And when he says things like that, and you just see his body language about certain things, you say, I think I kind of know where he's leaning on this one. I don't know that everybody's on that same page, but I understand where he's coming from because that's kind of what how a defensive coach is going to look at it. But I'm just kind of curious when they sit down and take a step back. I don't want that. Start one guy over the other because this guy gives you a chance to go out there and not only get the ball where it needs to go to, but also you got to make some plays. You want to beat Miami, you want to beat A&M, you want to beat Georgia, you want to beat Penn State, you want to beat Ohio State, you want to beat Texas, you want to beat Oregon. Your quarterback can't just manage the offense. He's got to make some plays. And things, both of these quarterbacks have the talent to make a lot of plays as long as you let them play within their system. Because my fear is if you go with Kenny, Well, what if he struggles in the first couple games? You're going to turn to CJ? That doesn't seem fair because we don't know how CJ would have done against the two best teams that you're going to face in the regular season. Or is Kenny so like afraid to make a mistake that he just doesn't take some chances that are there that you're going to need to beat Miami and Texas A&M? And then on the flip side, it's the same thing. If you start CJ and he makes a couple of those turnovers that we're seeing in practice, are you then going to yank him and put Kenny in the game, or are you going to let him grow and develop? My hope is that whoever he starts, you give that guy time to grow within the offense. That's my fear, is that you have a quick hook with one or the other, and that can be unfair. I've shared this, like from my experience. I was in a quarterback battle in college, and it came down to, Ray's going to start one game and I'm going to start the next game. Well, the opponent I was facing was not nearly as tough as the opponent Ray faced, and he was bad. But it's like, you don't know that I would have been bad against that team too. We got killed that game. And then the next week I started, we won. We played two very different teams. And that's my concern, is you've got to make the decision for the right reasons. Who gives us the best chance to not only beat Miami and A&M, but also gives us the best chance to beat those teams down the road? And who am I willing to say, and this is where I think Marcus Freeman's holdup is going to be. Am I willing to live with certain things, knowing that as they play more, I'm going to those things are going to be less? And that's true for both quarterbacks. If Kenny's a starter, turn him loose, let him go play, knowing he's going to make mistakes. If CJ's the starter, turn him loose, knowing he's going to make some mistakes, because he's going to grow to the point where he won't keep making those mistakes. But what you don't want to do is put him out there and just put handcuffs on him, because you're so afraid of making a mistake in a big game that you don't then get the playmaker version of both those kids.
That is my big picture concern for either quarterback, is them not being allowed to do what makes them so great in the first place. You didn't recruit CJ Carr, and you didn't flip Kenny Minchey to bring them to South Bend to have them be one-read dump-off quarterbacks. And that's what makes me nervous. Now, I know the sample size is a little bit incomplete, but there's been a trend of quarterbacks under Marcus Freeman who have regressed in that sense.
Right.
Now, I know there's reasons for it, but this is one of those years where it's like, okay, I think those excuses that you could have used for Sam Hartman and you could have used for Riley Leonard, I don't think those are going to be prevalent on this year's team. And so it's going to be interesting to see, okay, what then holds true? Is it that the expectation for the quarterback is to just go out there, run the offense, don't turn the ball over? Yeah. I don't know if I would be in love with that idea, regardless of who starts.
Yeah.
Whether that's Kenny or CJ. But I'm with you. You're going to have to be patient. One of the positives is there was a lot of noise last season around, Riley Leonard did not play well against NIU, and a lot of people were calling for his head, and he shouldn't have been starter, and Marcus Freeman stayed patient and understood and trusts his coaching staff and Riley to develop as the season went on, and then we know the type of year that they had. I'm hoping that experience holds true to this year's quarterback situation.
And unfortunately, I don't know that it will. That's my concern. I don't know that it will, because with Riley, there was a track record. And for being honest, the two guys that had the ability to become the full-time guy, they weren't ready yet in the coach's eyes, and that's Kenny and CJ. So it's a little bit of a different scenario because you don't have that track record. You know who Riley Leonard is because you watched him throw a pick against you that set them up, but then you watched him come out that second half against you and lead that team to 2 touchdowns as they took a late fourth quarter lead. You saw that. You had that track record. You don't have that with Kenny and CJ.
Sure.
And so we're clear. We're not saying that Kenny's going out there and just check down Charlie every snap. It's not what we're saying. We're saying whoever it is, don't turn them into that. But if they're both afraid, looking over their shoulder, like if I throw a pick, I'm going to get yanked for that guy. That's my fear, Trev. It's more of a not what we've seen, but what my concern is, because the head coach doesn't like turnovers, which he shouldn't like turnovers. But you got to find, what am I comfortable with early on? If you're making the same mistakes in game 5 and 6 that you made in games 1 and 2, we got to talk about something.
Yeah.
But you've got to let them live through those mistakes. And that was Gino Gadouli's point. Is like, we got to, this is when you test the boundaries, especially against a defense like we play every day. And so That's my, and then I also wonder, is he going to try to replicate last year's offense with the more mobile quarterback? Because guys, Kenny is not Riley Leonard. He's not Riley as a runner or passer. And as a runner, he's not the runner Riley was. As a passer, he has a much better arm than Riley had. He doesn't have the experience Riley had. So my whole point is whoever you start, and I think my personal opinion, I think Marcus Freeman's leaning toward Kenny Minchie. My personal opinion. Just from things he said and some things that I've heard. But if you're going to start him, let him loose. Let him play. Don't have him looking over his shoulder. Boy, if I hope I don't make a mistake because CJ's there, because then he's just going to make a mistake on the air and just throw the check down. Just get the ball in the hands of Jeremiah Love. All right, cool, but it's 3rd and 11, and he had 2 guys on him. Let him cook. Let him make those mistakes because you don't know that you can't hit that throw until you try it. And the problem we had all last year with the pass offense was, well, it's about time Jaden Greathouse woke up. Guys, that's been there all year. They just didn't throw him the ball until they had to. And then we saw the receivers kind of cook a little bit when they finally start throwing the ball. It's like you don't want to be that again this year. Let him learn those mistakes early. Now, I'm not saying you sacrifice a game. I want to beat Miami. I want to beat A&M. But you don't have to be so afraid of losing a game in that instance that you don't build your team in a way to where they can kind of be that playmaker that you need them to be down the road. You lost to Northern Illinois at home in week 2 last year. Not only made the playoff, but you hosted. If for worst case scenario, I think they're 1-1 after the first 2 games. I don't see any world in which they go 0-2. You're going to be fine as long as you're letting your quarterback develop. And so I don't want to see a decision made for the wrong reasons. I'm not saying they're going to. I'm just expressing my concerns. Anytime you have a concern, sit down and say, okay, who gives us the best chance to beat Miami, as well as win those games in December and January that matter even more than what happens on August 31st. August 31st is the most important one now, but you have to factor that in my opinion. And I don't know who that guy is. I'm just saying those are things that you have to think about. And then you make your decision and go with it. I just hope that whoever wins the job, that they give them a little bit of time to develop. Unless, like I said, what's the caveat, Trevor? With any quarterback, you get to that Miami game, you get to halftime, and you just look him in the eyes, and he's just like, he's out. Like he is like, it's just the moment's too big for him. That's the only time I think you have a short hook. Is if a guy, I thought he was ready, and then you get to the game, and it's just like deer in headlights. Like, yeah, I was cool throwing in front of the managers and trainers and coaches. Like now there's 80,000 screaming people in the stands. I don't think either of these guys are going to do that. I don't. I'm just saying that would be the only time in general I would be okay with a quick hook for a quarterback, barring just dramatically awful play. You go into halftime against Miami and your quarterback's throwing 3 picks and they're just like hitting dudes in the chest. Okay, we've got a problem. Clearly, he can't translate what we saw on Tuesdays onto Sunday and then eventually Saturdays. So those are things that we're going to find out. And honestly, you don't ever know what that's going to be until you get a guy out there. And I had somebody bring this up to me the other day, and I was like, this is what makes a decision tough. Well, with CJ Carr playing as well as he did in the spring game the last 2 years, maybe he's just a big game. Maybe he's just a game day guy. I'm like, maybe. But and it's a hypothetical, if he's getting outplayed every day by another talented player, how do you justify that based on the spring game? Like to some degree, you got to win the job in practice before you can go out there and show who you are on Saturdays and Sundays. All these things are factoring into these coaches' minds, and that's what I think makes this a tough decision, which is why I'm not really upset about who they pick. I've said before, I think CJ Carr is the best quarterback on the roster. It was up to me, based on things I've been told, I'd go with CJ Carr. That's what I would do. But I've also said, if they go with Kenny, as long as it's for the right reasons, let's roll, because Kenny's also a talented quarterback that I had ranked as a top 100 player. It's just whoever you pick, let them go be themselves. Let them loose. Let them live with the mistakes early. Learn from the mistakes early so that by the time you get to October, November, they've learned from those mistakes. You don't want the first time Kenny Minchie has to make a really, really tough throw in traffic to be the quarterfinal game against Georgia. You don't want that. You don't want him to have to, like, you're so afraid to make a mistake early that when you have to turn it loose, he's not ready for that moment. Let him make those mistakes on August 31st, because I promise you, if you get him to settle in, whoever it is, Kenny or CJ, fourth quarter of that game, they're going to be a different player. As long as you make that first pick, we're okay. Let's get to the coach, talk about it. Like I don't, now fortunately, from what we've seen of Marcus Freeman in games, he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's going to get in the quarterback's face and just butt chew him after his first pick the way the last head coach did. I don't think he's going to do that in a game, which I think helps. But it's just, hey, man, you're our guy. Don't worry about anything else. Don't be looking over your shoulder. Once we get talked August 31st, there's only one thing that matters. Go do your job. That's it. You just got to get their mindset. And the more time they have in practice to be the guy, I think the better prepared they are to do that, which goes back to the timing thing. So while I believe it should be CJ, just based on my personal evaluation, if they want to go with Kenny, go with Kenny because Kenny's also very talented. But just let that guy, whoever you pick, cook. Because you have two guys you can win with, Trevor. That's the great part about this. You have two guys you can win with. Just believe in that guy and let him be himself. That's the key.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at with this quarterback competition at this point. I'm okay with whoever it is as long as whoever they elect to be their starting quarterback is allowed to go be what makes them great players in the first place. And that is something I'm going to be evaluating to the highest degree this upcoming season because I really want to make sure that the starter has the opportunity to go out and shine and they don't get handcuffed and they don't get suppressed down to being something that they're not. And that is a fear. And I think you could say that that would be a fear for a lot of different offenses going through a quarterback battle that's this intense, this, between two players that are this young. If you're going to turn the ball over, how do you respond? I'm all with you on you look them in the eyes and you see, okay, what's going on? How'd you handle this? What'd you see? But at the end of the day, if they go with Kenny, let's ride. If they go with CJ, let's ride. As long as they're allowed to do what makes them great, I'm okay with either option.
Right. You want the quarterback coming off the field after throwing an interception or making a third down mistake thinking, what did I do wrong? Show me the clip, show me the film, let me see it. You don't want him thinking, am I about to get yanked?
Yes.
Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Hey, you know what? You made your third and 5, you had so-and-so open. You chew his butt a little bit. Like, come on, dude, you got to make that throw. It's there. Now, give him the tablet, show him the coverage, walk him through the mistake. Hey, when they show this, remember, when they show this, we practice this all week, Kenny, or CJ, when they show this, this is what we're doing here. They showed it. They did it. You locked in over here. Get it right. And then go out there and do it. Don't be like, you don't want him coming back to the field thinking if I oh man, they're going to yank me. That's the whole point is just let them play. Because here's the thought, guys, and we're going to talk about this next week. They're going to need to be patient with whoever the quarterback is. Mike Denbrock talked about this a little bit in the press conference as well. And he says, I think it's going to be important. Hold on. There's a different one. He says, I don't think I have it. But basically, he was talking about, like, guys, we need to be patient, essentially, with whoever wins the quarterback job. Coaches included. I don't think whoever wins the starting job is going to go out there and have a Jack Cohn welcome to Notre Dame moment. Remember that in 2021 against Florida State? Jack Cohn had been starting already. He'd already been in those moments. We may need some patience with that guy. And that's true for the coaches as well. Because, hey, they're going to turn the ball over at some point in time. They're going to miss a third down throw. They're going to make a bad protection check that gets them ear hold. They're going to they're going to hold on to the ball. So something bad is going to happen. You just need them to be in a mental space where it doesn't cause them to snowball. That's the key. And that's where the 2 weeks of prep is going to be important for that. So I have my prediction on who I think they're going to go with. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that Marcus Freeman is very clear on, this is my decision. And that's what I've been told. It will be his. So from what I'm told, now what we've been told is if look, Marcus Freeman, and 2 other coaches are part of it. If it's 2-on-1, whoever votes for the 2 is going to get the decision. I don't know that that's going to be true at quarterback based on what Marcus Freeman said. It's going to be my decision. Now, I think he'll take input, but it's not going to be like, I think they're going to do like a vote. Okay, you 3 say him, but I'm going other way. It's not going to be like that. You guys give me your feedback on the 2 quarterbacks, and then I'm going to go make the decision. And I just think from everything he said and what we saw last year, And what I've heard about how fall camp has gone, I think he picks Kenny Minchey. I don't know that I'd make the same decision, but I don't get paid to make those decisions. I'm just giving you my opinion as someone who hasn't been at every single practice. But at the end of the day, like I said, as long as you make the pick for the right reasons and you show that guy, we got your back, your team's got your back, don't look over your shoulder, just go win us some ball games, I think they'll be fine. Despite, even if they don't pick the guy that would be my choice. Because at the end of the day, I think you can win with both of them. And I hope that the fan base as a whole has that mindset. Unfortunately, from what we've seen the last month, if you're a pro Kenny guy, you're going to do nothing but pick apart CJ Carr if he wins a job. If you're a CJ Carr guy, you're going to do nothing but pick apart Kenny Minchey because they didn't pick your guy. Unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen. I just hope that our fan base can be like, look, man, at the end of the day, I'm a Notre Dame fan, not a CJ Carr fan. I'm a Notre Dame fan, not a Kenny Minchey fan. And that's my guy. Let's roll. And if at some point in time they make a decision to go to the other guy, then let's roll. And not just play this game that we've seen a lot in the last few years at running back. Remember in 2022 with Logan and Audric? Every time Logan had a 2-yard gain or missed a fit, this is why Audric should be in there. Every time Audric fumbled, the Logan, Team Logan guys, this is why Logan should be in there. I don't want to see that crap. But unfortunately, if Twitter's any indication, we are going to see that. But the reality is you've got 2 talented players you can win with. That's basically where Notre Dame is at quarterback. And that's a good place to be. It's a very good place to be.
Well, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show, guys, but don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk some defense because there is a lot of promising intel coming out from the defensive side of the ball. But before we get there, folks, be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. It is game week next week, and we're going to start our in-season content plan here at Irish Breakdown. A lot of good things coming out. Make sure you have that notification bell hit so you know whenever we go live. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. We're going to be doing a lot more things on that channel this year. It's going to be very similar feel to how we do things at Irish Breakdown, but it's big picture. We're talking all of college football there. That's the name. So get ahead of the game. Make sure you subscribe to that channel now. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 3 of today's show on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we're going to talk some defense. And everything that we have heard so far this offseason about the defense, it entered the spring a little bit of a question mark. The talent was there. We knew what type of level of talent this defense had, but we didn't know what was necessarily going to be done with that talent. Al Golden leaves. He's now the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. Enter Chris Ash, who took over for Al Golden less than a week after his departure. My confidence, and I don't want to speak for you, so I'll let you follow this up, but my confidence as the offseason has grown or has progressed, has grown in Chris Ash a little bit. And that was kind of highlighted by his post-game, post-scrimmage press conference on Sunday after the defense ended up winning their scrimmage by about 4 points.
He had probably my favorite quote of the day, Trev. I'm going to try to find the Chris Ash quote.
Was it about
they were asking about
the temperature?
He had two things. He's like, one was they asked him about, the talent. And he said, to be honest with you, the only place that would be comparable was when I went to Ohio State in 2014. There were a lot of really good players there, very similar to the situation here. People can say a lot of things about me, but I'm not dumb. This is the part I loved. People can say a lot of things about me, but I'm not dumb. If I was going to take this job, it was because we have some pretty good players, and we do. And I just thought that was like a moment of honesty that I just loved. He's like, look, I'm in the NFL. I've been fired before, like almost every coach on the planet has, including Marcus Freeman, who got fired at Purdue. Look, if I'm going to get back into coaching in college, I'm going somewhere where I've got dudes. I'm not going to do it. I'm too old to do the rebuilding project. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm walking in where there's some dudes. And I thought that was, that comment was just, it struck me as like really funny. He's like, look, I'm not dumb. You can say a lot of things about me, but I'm not dumb. I knew what I was walking into. And he went on later to say, like, look, I didn't know a lot about Notre Dame for last season because his job in the NFL, he wasn't like doing NFL college scouting. He said, but as he got to the postseason, he said he started to, the playoffs, he started to pay more attention to Notre Dame even before the potential job opening came available. and how Notre Dame, the personnel, the talent stood out to him. And I don't know how you don't watch the Indiana game and you don't watch the Georgia game and be like, dude, they got some cats over there. And so, but we already knew that. We all knew that about this defense. It was how would things fit into Chris Ash? And so we know a little bit more about what he's doing. I think there's still a level. I want to be careful with what I'm saying here because I don't want to give away things, but it's going to still be an aggressive defense. It's just going to look a little different from like where they bring guys and then what the back end structure looks like. But it's still a lot of turn the front seven loose and let them go make plays. I guess it's front six now. Let them go make plays. Try to create confusion in the mind of the quarterbacks, which they've done a pretty good job of. Part of the reason for the struggles of the offense has been how good this defense has been. And to like, and here's where you feel good about it. I had two people that I talked to that have been around the team in fall camp that know football. And they said to me about the Jersey scrimmage yesterday, he goes, defense was definitely the best unit on the field yesterday. But I came away feeling really good about the offense because there's still some things they're working out and working through. Defense is always a little further ahead now. But number 3, it's like, dude, that's an elite defense. And this offense made them work. So somebody's got to win or lose when it's you versus you. But you want to see the other unit that maybe doesn't win still battle, still get after it, still compete. And that's what I'm hearing. But from all the different sources I talk to, I mean, the talent is there. I had a guy that I talked to just today, and he's like, look, man, you know me. You know I know ball. I've seen this. I've seen that. I was like, the speed on this defense is just unbelievable. I've heard that from a lot of people. I talked to somebody right after the Jersey scrimmage who's at the Jersey scrimmage, and he was like, this defense is insane. It's like, all right, talk to me. And he's just like, he described a play. He goes, they ran a play, and it looked like there's this run lane hole I'm just like, oh, it's about to be a big run. And all of a sudden, Drake Bowen just flies into the hole and just blows the running back up because they were doing live tackling yesterday. And he's like, there's plays where it's like, I think the running back is about to catch this route and get to the edge. And then all of a sudden, a linebacker safety just flies out there and it's a 2-yard gain. He's like, that happens constantly. And he goes, and it's not about the offense. It's just about how this is such a smart, long group and fast group. Now, I have heard some things about, still getting used to the coverage structures and maybe not always covering everybody. You got to work that out. It hasn't been perfect. That's part of camp. You're going to have some blown coverage situations. But the other thing I've heard about the defense from fall camp too, Trevor, is the one big question mark that I had, personnel-wise, coming into fall camp is how good will the D tackles be? I've now talked to 3 people in the last week that have said, I actually think the tackles are further along than the edge players right now. That's how good they've been. And it wasn't, I was like, are you worried about the edge? He goes, no, I'm not worried about the edge players at all. They're playing great. But it's like the interior's been a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Now, my takeaway was, I wonder if part of it is him saying he's more surprised by the interior as opposed to just that they're better. But like, I've got a constant feedback from people that the interior is going to be really good. Marcus Freeman talked about Jason Onye yesterday, raved about Jason Onye. And there was something that was said yesterday that I want to get to here in a second that I just think is an amazing thing about Jason Onye. But more so when I just the consistency with which I've heard from sources about 47 just basically unblockable. And Trev, anyone that's on the message board knows I put a camp intel piece up last week, and that's the one thing that was in there. So when then Marcus Freeman comes out and says what he said, and then Chris Ash says what he said, you're like, okay, that's kind of confirmation of what I've heard, some of the different things that we've been told about how things have gone in fall camp so far. So I think those things get me encouraged about where this team is. Secondary's been as good as we hoped that it would be, but there's been a lot of encouragement from some of the question marks we have been so far have looked pretty good. and that's the interior. And I consistently hear that the defensive line got the best of the offensive line yesterday, is what I was told. But it was a great battle. And so that's a very, very strong takeaway for me so far from fall camp, because I think this defense has the tools to continue doing what they've been doing, which is play championship football. And not just because Chris Ash inherited talented players, but that he's building the defense to fit the things that they do.
I was cautiously optimistic in saying at the start of fall camp that, look, I'm very confident in Notre Dame's offense, because I think that really for the next month, day in and day out, you're going to be going against one of, if not what could be the best defense in the country when the season's said and done. And everything that we've heard throughout fall camp just makes me more and more confident each day that that's the case. Very long, very athletic group. One of the things that I was happy about, your questions was about the interior of the defensive line. My question was about the safety rotation, not if they would be good. I was very confident that no matter who was back there, the safeties were going to be fine. But it was just a question of the pecking order. That was one of the very few things that didn't really start to take shape out of the spring to have some sort of foundation going into fall camp, because Jalen Stroman transfers in, but then he's not able to play. And then Talich and Johnson and Blair all played exceptional in the spring, grew a lot quicker than what I think some maybe assumed that they would. And then Marcus Freeman kind of nixed a lot of the speculation around the safety position. It was just like, yeah, outside of Adon Shula, we're just going to play 4 guys because they're just that talented. And I think that speaks volumes. They're a very deep group. The depth is apparent, but the defense is going to be really exciting this year. Really, really exciting.
I want to read this statement from Chris Ash from Saturday's press conference. It's about Jason Onye. He says this. He says, they asked about Jason Onye's evolution, and he says, I'll start with the history of Jason. When I first got here, I met with every defensive player individually, and I didn't know his, he says, I didn't know his, let me find it here. I didn't know Jason's story, referring to what got him off the team last year or what he's gone through. And he told me right away, I was really impressed that he was willing to open up and tell me what he's gone through to get back to where he's at right now. It started last spring. He was a completely different kid. He showed up with a positive attitude, just wanted to work every single day. He's willing to be coached every single day. He takes coaching and applies it to the next series or the next day. He just shows up with a competitive spirit, trying to be the best that he can be. Okay, that's phenomenal. I love hearing that. I love that Jason took accountability. We all make mistakes in life. We all do things. We look back. I still, at 47 years old, I look back and like, God, I wish I would have done that differently. I wish I would have treated this person differently. I would have been more respectful to this person if I would have handled this adversity in my life differently. And Jason owned it. But then you get into this, because that's a great feel-good story. But feel-good stories don't stop running backs or sack the quarterback, okay? This is the next part of what he said that got me fired up as well. So first of all, I love the accountability that Jason showed as a man. Second part, he's big, he's strong, he's physical. He's learning to play like that. He's not fast or fancy, but he's violent. He's doing a great job with his hands and getting great knockback in the run game. He's understanding how to rush the passer with his ability. Where he was at when I first got here to today is really an impressive transformation. So it's a great story, but it's the production. And then the other guy that I keep hearing about, we obviously hear Donovan Heinisch. I've heard Gabriel Rubio's been more steady, but the other guy that I've heard has made a ton of plays in fall camp so far is Jared Dawson. And that was a good sign too, because he was a little up and down in the spring. You know, some days he looked good. Some days you're like, was Jared Dawson out there? From what I've heard so far, we saw it in the opener. We saw it in the one practice we've been at. He looks great in drills. We haven't had a chance to see it anywhere else. This is coming from sources that I talked to, is that Jared Dawson's the other guy that's really had like a take that next step type of spring. And that's where the confidence comes from. The confidence at D-tackle isn't just because of Onye. It's not just because of Donovan Heinisch. It's not just because of Gabriel Rubio. It's not just because of Jared Dawson or Amram Mukim. It's as a unit, you're seeing elevation from all of them. And that's what people are raving about. Now we got to go see them apply that to another team, but like when they're facing another team, but so far the feedback has been excellent. And like I said, had somebody yesterday say, like, I think this defense has a chance to be even better than it was last year. And this is not from someone who's prone to hyperbole. So to hear that, made me like, okay, I'm digging it. I'm digging it. Because at the end of the day, we talk about all the quarterback stuff. If the defense plays championship football, then you can do kind of what we talked about, which is, maybe let the quarterbacks go be themselves, but that doesn't mean you drop them back in empty formation and throw the ball 50 times in the opener either. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, look, if this kid can throw the ball down the field, and they both can, let him throw the ball down the field. Let this kid have some chances to maybe hit some backside concepts. Put this kid in some chances to make some big plays. Don't just ask him to throw hitches and crossers and slot fade all day, because you have a defense that can bail you out if you get in some trouble. Like, how's it any different? Quarterback throws an out cut that gets picked off at the 35-yard line. How's that any different than Marcus Freeman going for it on 4th and 2 at the 35-yard line against Texas A&M? Why did he do that? Because in that situation, he is making the choice to say, I'm going to put the defense at risk, or the team at risk, because I have faith that the defense will bail us out if we don't get this. Now, there was faith that you're going to get it. And like a lot of coaches, defensive coaches especially, look at it that way. Like, okay, I took the risk. We didn't get it, but my defense will bail you out. But all of a sudden, if you do the same thing and it's an interception or a fumble, all of a sudden the world's over because we turn the ball over. Well, do you still have a defense that can keep the team from going 35 yards for a touchdown or not? And you do, or we believe that they will, based on all the things we're hearing. And like, that's a very important part too. You want to have success at quarterback, have a defense that they can trust. Hey, if I go make a mistake, I know the defense is going to bail us out. We're fine. Now go live to fight another day. Because all of a sudden, quarterbacks make mistakes, and then your defense is, giving up touchdowns, and all of a sudden you're down 14-3 on the road in Miami, and now we're in a different ball game now. And that's why it's good to have this kind of defense. I think that can take some of the pressure off your young quarterbacks as they develop and get more comfortable. And it also helps Mike Denbrock say, in this situation, backed up on our own 11, and it's 3rd and 11 at our own 11, maybe let's try a pop a draw or screen or something like that. But we can punt as long as they get it past midfield. I trust our defense is going to keep them off the board. I don't have to force something here. I think it's good for the quarterback and for Mike Denbrock if the defense can be as good as it does. And here's the other thing I tried to say something the other day. Why I don't concern myself about the quarterbacks maybe turn the ball over more than we like. Well, I think a lot of quarterbacks are going to experience that this season. And they're not going to face a secondary like this. They're just not. With all due respect and there's some good cornerback tandems on the roster. There is not a Leonard Moore and a Christian Gray on the roster or on the schedule. There just isn't. And they know your offense. They know what you do. They've been practicing against us since March. You know what I mean? They're going to make some of those plays. And that's why it's good to have camp, because then you get to Saturdays in the season and you're just like, dude, this is the easy part. Like, I mean, I've been going against Leonard Moore and Christian Gray for the last month and a half. Like now I got to go against the scout team for a week, and now I got to go against this other team who doesn't have a Leonard Moore on the other side, or a Don Shula, or a Drake Bowen, or a Boubacar Traore. Cool. This is a little bit easier.
Yeah, secondary was another question that we had about this group ahead of fall camp. And, questions about Leonard Moore and Christian Gray aside, because I think we can kind of accept what they are. The young cornerbacks, really the overall youth of the room was kind of at the center of both of our attention for this fall camp, because past Leonard Moore, you have Carson Hobbs, who's very inexperienced. And then you have essentially 3 true freshmen that kind of round out the rest of your 2 deep. But from some of the things that we've heard in camp, Bryan, it doesn't sound like the true freshman nature of the 2 deep is going to be as big of a concern as it would be for other teams.
They're not overwhelmed. They all of them, Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Cree Thomas, all of them are having freshman moments. If you saw the video that Notre Dame put out today, there's a clip where Dallas Golden's in pretty good coverage against Malachi Fields, and CJ just drops it over the outside shoulder, and Malachi makes a great catch on it. And you're just kind of like, that's Dallas Golden's moment of, this dude's just better than I am right now. Like, there's not a lot I could do, but he was in position. We've heard a lot of good things about that Dallas has done, but he's going to have those freshman up and down moments. But he's in the 2 deep because he has to be at first. But now I'm hearing a lot of growing confidence about the kind of player he is. And then Mark Zachary, Trev, it's like it seems like almost every highlight video there's some play of Mark Zachary's making. It seems on the video either before or after the play. There's one in today's video where they show him I think it was him doing the lockdown thing, the seatbelt thing, and you're like, well, there's Mark Zachary another play. I literally had someone tell me yesterday he's a pick a day. Like that, seriously, if Mark Zachary doesn't have a pick in practice, you're surprised by it. And I had somebody say, like, he reminds me so much of Xavier Watts in how he's smart, he baits the quarterbacks, and then the closing speed is such, and he's super long. We talked about that when he broke his film down when we did our corner show over the summer, Trev. He's looking at Mark Zachary. He's like one of those kids that can like scratch his knee without bending over. He's just got those really long arms, you know what I mean? And but he's fast, he's instinctive, he's smart. The practice we saw first week, he's getting beat by Jerome Bettis Jr., he's getting beat by this guy, Dallas is getting beat by a walk-on. And then you see how they've evolved now 2-3 weeks in, and some of the things that we're hearing from different people, including some offensive people about, man, those kids over there are good football players. I feel a lot better about the depth at corner. And we've seen Chance Tucker back, and he's battling, and that gives you another player there. But I feel a lot better about the play of the corners, the depth at cornerback. But, of course, Leonard Moore and Christian Gray are still, like, playing at a high level. So I'm comfortable there. The only question mark I have right now on defense, Trev, is really just about – and by the way, one of the standouts that I've heard from the last two scrimmage opportunities, I've heard a lot of things about Jalen Sneed making a lot of plays as well. And a lot of faith that the linebacker room is just continuing to just be dominant. The other safety opposite Adon Schuler is probably a bit of a question mark. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. But I think that's the one thing that I look at and say, I don't know where that is because I haven't heard as much about that from sources. Not a lot of people are talking about the other safety other than, hey, they're all going to play and they're all doing some good things. And I did hear that Tay Johnson lit up a tight end yesterday on a pass over the middle. As soon as the guy caught it, they said it was a great catch, but he got lit up right away by Tay. So we'll see how that continues to develop. But that's when I say question mark, it's more so a lack of information as opposed to me hearing that they're struggling. It's just a lack of information from people. It's just not a lot of people have an opinion, or at least one that they're willing to share on the safety room right now. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But just overall, Trev, I love what I'm hearing about this defense. And it's not because the offense is struggling. That's the other thing. It's like, these receivers are dropping balls left and right. The O-line is this. The quarterbacks are just terrible. And you're like, okay, is the defense really that good, or does the offense just suck? I don't think that's the case based on what I'm hearing from my sources now, which is a good sign. Very good sign.
It's absolutely a good sign. And also about the safety room, man, if there is going to be a question mark of any position room, I'm happy that it's a Mike Mickens-led type of group. Question mark being just the lack of information. You don't know what you don't know. But the defense, Brian, for all intents and purposes, is putting themselves in a position to kind of anchor another run. Be that foundation. You say it all the time, that the defense gets you to the door, but the offense takes you home once you get to that national championship game. And this defense is putting themselves in a prime spot. I took a look. FanDuel finally has the alternate spreads out, total points for Miami, total points for Notre Dame, and they set the over-under at 23.5. And if history tells us anything, I'd be leaning towards taking the under. It's not a shot at Miami. You just go look at what Notre Dame did in 12 of their regular season games last year, or 12 of their, 16 games last year is holding opponents under 20 points. So, but they did release those lines finally. And so,
and one of the teams that went over 20, Louisville had they had a drive that was 10 yards, another drive that was like 20 something yards. I mean, Notre Dame spotted them 2 touchdowns last year.
Mm-hmm.
They had the opening kickoff. Remember that, Trev, when Devin Ford fumbled the opening kickoff, and that gave them a score. And then you had the fumble by Jadarian Price. The second quarter, they gave them a score. So Louisville, who's one of the 4 teams to score over 20 points against Notre Dame last year, had a 3-play, 24-yard touchdown drive, a 3-play, 9-yard touchdown drive, and a 7-play, 17-yard field goal drive. Think about that. 3 of their 4 scoring drives covered a total of 50 yards. Not average 50 yards, total 50 yards. I think that should be pointed out when we talk about the games where they gave up over 20 points, because I actually believe they gave up over 20 in their last 2 playoff games. They gave up over 20 against USC, and then Louisville is the only other one, I believe, that they gave up over 20 points.
12 of their 16, baby.
Yeah. And again, that game was one where they spotted them some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and then one of Penn State's touchdowns came on a short field after an interception, correct? Then they scored a touchdown after Riley got picked by Denai Dennis Sutton.
Yep. Well, it was because Denai Dennis Sutton got the pick, and then Jack Kaiser picked off Drew Aller in the end zone. That got called back, and then the next play, Nicholas Singleton ran it in for a touchdown.
Such a bad freaking call.
Yeah,
I'm still mad about that. I'm mad about that, and I'm mad about because that was actually called on a Don Schuler. It was Jack had to pick, but the PI was called on a Don Schuler. That and the PI they called on Jack against Georgia just still bother me.
Yeah,
but that was a 39-yard touchdown drive. To your point, Trevor.
So what do you think then, Brian? Do you think that the defense is going to in a good position to be the foundation of another run?
It's got the talent to do so, Trevor, and I like what I'm hearing so far. They still have some things to prove, obviously. There's some things we have to learn about Chris Ash. Colby Duvall in the chat earlier asked, will he be able to call plays and adjust like Al Golden did? That's the unknown. That's the thing we don't know. And it's not something that I really think a lot about, because I won't know until we get to August 31st. Because practice is much more of a scripted thing. Hey, this day we're working on this. On this day we're working on that. You know, well, why didn't you call that blitz on that Tuesday practice where the offense ate you up? Because that's not what we were working on that day. We were working on this over here. I wasn't game planning on Tuesday. I don't know, like what would be the August 12th. I wasn't on Tuesday, August 5th. If I'm Chris Ash, I'm not calling plays to game plan to beat Mike Denbrock in the Notre Dame offense. We're working on this set of coverages, this set of fronts, and this set of calls. That's what we're working on today. It's different. It's much more structured. It's much more building blocks type of thing. And that's why I don't get caught up in some of the ups and downs of fall camp, because you don't know what they're working on that particular day. Some days as an offensive coordinator, you may go tell the defensive coordinator, hey, man, we're working on this today. So give us these 3 coverages that you guys do that give us fits, because I want my quarterbacks to have to know where to go when it's not there maybe. And other days you're like, hey, man, we're going to work on this, and I need you guys to like chill out a little bit with some of this because we're trying to work on something. That's part of just kind of, doing your own, doing your own thing is not really like you're doing your own thing, but there's got to be some communication with the offense or the defense where it's like, hey, you guys want to work on blitzes today. Cool. We're going to work on our screen game today because we want to screen against a blitz, but you need work on how to play a screen if a team calls a screen when you blitz. So there's that communication that happens. And so I don't know how that part of this is going to go. We don't know about injuries. We don't know. There's certain things we don't know, but everything I'm hearing, I have a great level of confidence in this defense. And, obviously when we made our predictions, our championship predictions and all that on Saturday, which was a lot of fun, by the way, that was one of the more fun shows we've ever done. It was just a blast having fun with you guys talking about that. But I'll just say this. I have no reservations or hesitation about my predictions based on what I heard coming out of the Jersey scrimmage with the defense. Maybe the offense, a couple things that I want to hear still that I'm a little concerned about, but defensively, other than the things we just wouldn't, there's no way we can know that in fall camp. Like there's no way I can know what a Chris Ash game plan is going to look like in Notre Dame. Practice isn't going to tell me that. There's no way I can know what kind of in-game side adjust that Chris Ash is going to make, what kind of halftime adjustments he's going to make, what kind of, sometimes a halftime adjustment is just, here's my foot. I'm putting it up your, because you just got to play harder. Like you're there. You just got to play harder. You got to play smarter. They're not doing anything to schematically that's giving us problems. You're not executing. We're not executing. We're not doing this. But sometimes you got to be able to do that in a way that inspires them to go do that. Like, I don't know that Al Golden made a whole lot of adjustments in the second half against Penn State. They made some, but it wasn't. What was different was, I need you to be more physical at the point of attack. I need you to play better. You know what to do it. And then Marcus Freeman's speech was very similar to that. Sometimes it's that. I don't know if Chris Ash can do that, and I won't know in any way, shape, form, or fashion until we get to games. That's not a knock. That's just reality. That's just someone who knows football even a little bit knows you don't know that from practice. You don't know that till you get to games. And so we're going to learn that. But how the aggressiveness, the physicality, how they play the run, how disruptive they are, all those things I feel great about from what I'm hearing in fall camp. And so in that regard, Trev, my answer to this question is, can they? Yes, absolutely. If not even be better than we've seen in recent years. They got to prove it now. But the pieces are in place. I'll just say it. The pieces are in place for this to be the best defense of the Marcus Freeman era. I'm not saying they will. You got to go earn that. And I can't make that kind of prediction with a first-year coordinator who I haven't seen call a game since, like a game in a normal situation since 2015? Because I don't count Texas in 2020, man. That was such a weird year and COVID and all that stuff. I mean, it's an animal. I don't even get into that. But it's like what we said about Al Golden. The guy hadn't called a defense since 2005. Like, I think he could be good, but I don't have a clue. We need to see that. But so far, everything I can learn about Chris Ash, I've yet to see or hear anything that makes me say my reservations about him were correct. Everything I've heard so far about him as a coach is my reservations have been silenced by what I'm seeing and hearing. And that's what you want to see. Right? I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, no, I knew this was going to be a great hire. I didn't know. I had some concerns. I had some reservations. Now it's time to go prove me right or wrong. And so far, I don't say right or wrong because I don't know that I said it was going to be a bad hire. I said I have some concerns. So far, I feel good about what I'm hearing about this defense. That it has a chance to be that championship caliber defense that can go out there and stop anybody if they play their game.
Well, it's definitely a good spot to be in, no doubt about it. And I agree with you. I think that this defense absolutely could, at the very least, repeat a lot of the success that they had last year. They have almost all the pieces to do it. And I agree with you completely. Well, listen, folks, that is going to do it for part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. But do not go anywhere. We do have a mailbag coming up, so be sure to get your questions in if you have not already. Put a little MB on it to let us know to set it aside, a little MB or a mailbox emoji. But be sure to get those questions in. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, whatever platform you're listening to us on. We would greatly, greatly appreciate a 5-star review. Be sure to go check out the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Those are our premium message boards. That's where exclusive intel comes out. Brian talked about it at the start of the show today. That is where a lot of the in-season content plan is going to be. You're going to find out what's on there. There's going to be some exclusive things for message board members only in the Champions Lounge. Find all that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show, we're going to do a mailbag here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. And if this does happen to be your first ever mailbag, be sure to put a little MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji that lets us know to set it aside. We're going to go until we're out of questions or until time's up. And so if you want to make sure that you get your question in, you want to throw in a super chat that gets bumped to the top. And Brian, if I remember correctly, I'm sure there's a handful of super chats in there.
We did. We had a couple super chats in there. First of all, from Patrick Goswelli. I hope that I said that wrong. Correct, Patrick. But he said, a little late and I heard the opening. I'm praying for your wife and hopes the surgery is perfect. God bless her, you and your entire family. Much love, brother. I appreciate that, Patrick, very, very much. Very, very much. Means a lot to both of us. And I'm sure Angela will see that later. She's at a appointment right now, but she'll see that later. James Salumi, do we have any idea who's better under pressure? Those drills Marcus Freeman has mentioned. Again, it depends on who you talk to. And this is where I think some of the quarterback stuff that I'm hearing, I'm taking with a grain of salt. because I know people's presuppositions on who they think is the better quarterback. And so you'll hear things like that's clearly a spin towards something. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that it's the same quarterback every day, James, to be honest with you. But I do believe that's something that's going to factor into the situation. How do guys handle certain pressure situations? I'll just leave it at that for now. Yeah. I'll leave it at there for now. And then KEM36 mailbag. Can you guys produce an IB poster? Well, I don't know what kind of poster you're looking for. I can't produce a poster that has like Notre Dame pictures on it. Like, you remember when we had to do all the podcasts from the rental property because we had the construction of our house because of the flood we had in our house. I had that calendar that had Notre Dame picked players in it. I got that made for me. It was all photos that Angela took. I got that made for myself. I can't sell it because we can't sell things that have photos of Notre Dame players on it, especially current players. We have a flag. I've got one. Trevor's got one. But shoot me an email and kind of let me know, Bryan@irishbreakdown.com. Let me know what kind of poster you're talking about, and I'll let you know if I can get it or not. So I appreciate the super chat there. And then we have one from Ashkat Shakar. Do so many great teams starting young quarterbacks this year, Trevor, make it more plausible that the quarterback competition loser pulls a Nussmeier Miller mods and sticks around through 2026? Miller Moss.
I mean, it's definitely a possibility. As we like to say here on the channel, I'm not going to bet my mortgage on the loser of this quarterback competition staying around through 2026 because I think that's asking a lot of either talented player. Look, I think it's realistic enough to say that whoever loses this quarterback competition, there's a good chance that they don't stick around at Notre Dame and could be playing somewhere else next year. I would love nothing more than both players to finish out their careers at Notre Dame and get their degree and be a strong 1-2 punch at the quarterback position, I guess, if you want to call that, until 2027. But that's just not realistic, not in this day and age of college football. And I also want to see the best four, one of Kenny Minchey or CJ Carr. Now, ideally, they don't go have this crazy successful season against Notre Dame, but I would love to see them thrive. Truthfully, I would. And so is it possible? Yeah, I'll always say it's a possibility. But like we like to say in the show, I'm not putting, I guess I don't have a mortgage. I'm not putting my car on it. So.
Not putting your rent money on it, right, Trev? So.
No.
Super chat from Clint Eastwood. Thank you for that very, very much. Clint Beastwood with the super chat. Thank you for that. Questions at the top. Let's get up to it, Trev. Go to the top now.
Let's get rolling. Matt, 2011 GT. Whatever happened to Kahanu Kia?
Still on the team. I think he's obviously working back from the injury. Honestly, Matt, the really thing you don't hear anything about Kahanu, and the reason you don't hear anything about like Anthony Saka and Josiah Kia, Ko'o Kia. You don't hear a lot about Bodie Cahoon. You don't hear a lot about Teddy Rizak, and several of those guys I've heard some good things about, is because, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of reps when you've got the talent that Notre Dame has at linebacker. And I don't know if Kahanu's injured more. I don't know if we got so little access to practice. I haven't really noticed him not being out there. He was out there at the beginning of fall camp. I couldn't tell you if he wasn't out there the last two, and he hasn't been commented on in regard to any injuries that have been noted by the Notre Dame staff. So I just think, honestly, with a lot of these linebackers, they're just buried on a deep depth chart is really what it boils down to, Matt.
Agreed. From the Shark 83, why did these quarterbacks get little to no meaningful reps last year when staff knew Angeli had no shot?
That is something, Trev, that I agree with. We talked about it last year. From everybody that I talked to, there were few people that I know that thought that Steve Angeli was going to win the quarterback battle in 2025. Very few. And so, yeah, you do ask the question, why weren't some of those opportunities given? The easy answer is basically they didn't think either one of those guys were ready to take over last year if Riley got injured, and they would have turned it over to Steve. in a one-game situation. And I think that's what it boils down to is even though they knew Steve wasn't going to start this year, they knew that they felt that Steve was still the best backup last year. Had Riley gone down with a season-ending, let's just say the Northern Illinois injury was season-ending. I think Steve Angeli steps in as the starting quarterback. Do I think he would have remained the starting quarterback all year if Riley was out for the season? No, I don't. But he was the backup quarterback, and the number one goal last season was to win a championship last season. And they felt Steve Angeli gave them the best chance to do that if somebody had to come off the bench and rally. And the way that he performed against Penn State, we've talked about this, it gets blown up a little too much. But the fact is he came in, he was calm, he was poised, got the ball to his playmakers, check down, slant, that kind of thing. But that's where they needed to go against the prevent defense that Penn State was playing, and he got them in position to get a field goal. That's basically what they were looking for. But I tend to agree with that. I think there were more opportunities to get one of those guys in the game. Like I thought Steve stayed in the Purdue game too long. I would have given Kenny more than one series of that game.
Yep.
I thought the Stanford game was a perfect time to get Kenny more playing time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but obviously the coaches saw it a different way because they were more thinking about the now.
Yeah. From Brandon Plensner, since upon further review will be on the message board, will you have all 22?
That is the plan, yes. And that's partly why we're putting on the message board. Also, Brandon, I will have some of that video available for the video breakdowns that I'm doing. So I'll have like breaking down the run game, breaking down the pass game that we just watched. Here's some key plays that they ran the ball real well here. Here's a couple things that worked for them. Hey, they struggled to run the ball here. Here's some breakdowns and some plays that are examples of why they struggled. So I'll have those breakdowns on in a separate article, but upon further review, we'll have not as much as those breakdowns, but so we're going to do the upon further review will be somewhat, the first part will be similar to last year. We'll talk about, who our players of the game were. We'll do keys to victory revisited, and we'll talk about the turning point in the game or turning points in the game. And then when we get to part two, and that part will be on the message board, and it'll also be on the podcast. So we'll put that first half on the podcast. The second half, which is audio and video only on the message board, we will break down those turning point plays. We will then look at, things that we saw in the game. Hey, they struggled to run the ball. Here's a couple plays to back that up. Or man, they crushed it inside zone. Here's an example of it. Let me talk you through it. That kind of thing on the upon further review. And then I'll follow up in the coming days with more detailed X's and O's film breakdowns, also with that type of film on it. So yes, that is the plan, Brandon. As long as we have access to it, we will continue to do that.
From Vanilla Chill, if you were to speculate, where do you think some of these coaches lean on with the quarterback battle?
I don't really want to get into who the other coaches are leaning on. All I will say is I think that Marcus Freeman, just my opinion, is leaning towards Kenny Minchey. At least he was as of yesterday. Now, that may change. He may go back and watch the film and come to a different conclusion, but that's just my opinion on where he's leaning. I don't want to get – because if I start telling you, okay, I heard this guy is more CJ, then now all of a sudden now that creates some potential friction there that I just would rather not be a part of. But I other than saying I don't know that everybody's on the same page. And when I say that, that's not a bad thing. Guys, that's a very normal thing in coaching. You what it is, and it's like that with play calling or game plans. This is a rule you have. We're going to argue, we're going to debate, we're going to state our case, we're going to do our breakdown, we're in the film session together, we're putting our game plan together. What are the three, the 3 or 5 or 7 third and medium calls that we're going to go with? Well, when we come out of that meeting, we have our calls, but not everybody agreed that those are the 5 to 7 best calls during the meeting. Make your case, state your case, but here's what we do. When we leave the room, we're all on the same page. It'll be the same thing here. So let's say there's 2 assistants that are pro CJ, 2 that are pro Kenny. As far as when I mean pro, I mean they think this guy should start. They get together. If Marcus Freeman is going to hear their opinions, which he should. Here's why I think CJ's the guy. Here's why I think CJ's the guy. Here's why I think Kenny's the guy. Here's why I think Kenny's the guy. Then Marcus Freeman makes a decision. Once he's made that decision, y'all 5 leave that room supporting the coach's decision. And that's how it works. And more often than not, that coaches are fine with that. Like, look, he gets paid the big bucks. It's his team. He gets to make that decision. And it's not like the guys who think CJ should start think Kenny Minchie's a bum. And the people that think Kenny should start think CJ's a bum. Everybody in that room thinks both of these kids are really good football players. There's just some coaches that I think believe that CJ Carr gives them the best chance to win, not just in the opener, but also in the postseason. And there's others that I think are maybe leaning towards Kenny. That's natural in a situation where you've got two talented players. And if they were all on the same page, they would have named the starter a week ago. Like, it was that obvious, they would have named the starter a week ago. So this is not something that when I say it, it's meant to be controversial. Oh, there's disunity. That's very normal in a coaching room, just like we're not all in agreement that the best way to run duo against this look is this way. But once the decision is made by the OC that this is how we're going to run it, then you go out there and coach it up and you get them ready and we're all on the same page, unified front. You're not in the meeting like, freaking told that guy with your offensive line, told him they can't block it that way. You don't do that. You express that in the room. So I don't want this to come across like there's some dissension. This is a very normal thing. And, Marcus Freeman has to decide, who am I going to listen to? How much am I putting on each person's opinion? And ultimately, at the end of the day, does it matter? Because I'm ultimately going to make the decision. But any smart coach is going to want feedback from the coach. I mean, if you don't think Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli are smart enough to have a pretty good say in who starts a quarterback, then go find yourself a new OC and a new quarterbacks coach who you trust enough to make that kind of decision, or at least sway you if you feel a different way. And I say that because I do think he has that kind of faith in those guys, which is why he hired them. So I think he'll take their counsel. At the end of the day, if he feels a certain way, he's going to go in that direction. And let's just say hypothetically those coaches didn't agree with it. When they walk out the meeting room, all right, coach, we got you. This is what we're going to do. Let's go roll and let's go put this thing together for Kenny or CJ or whatever and play. I just don't want it to come across as like I'm trying to stir the pot. Ooh, there's dissension in the coaching staff. I'm not. This is a very normal thing, especially in a tightly contested quarterback battle like we've seen. Because if there wasn't guys that view different things, we wouldn't even be talking about this. We'd be talking about whoever the starter is that they named last week. That's what we'd be talking about.
Another one from Vanilla Chill. Do you think that with Carr's aggression, there could be some reckless aggression that makes some coaches apprehensive? Like he made a wow play, but it's still the wrong decision type of thing. Potentially. Well, I know this is going to – I'll give you this answer from my lens. I don't have the sources that Bryan has, and I've had even less availability because I live in Indianapolis that I haven't been at every single practice that we've had availability on. Do I think that that's a possibility? Potentially. But it goes back to what I said when we talked about the quarterbacks, a couple of segments ago, Vanilla. I don't want the decision to be made for either player, for Kenny or CJ, for them to be inserted into an offense where they can't do what makes them why they were recruited to Notre Dame. I don't want them to be put in an offense where it's like, hey, you better not turn the ball over. That's when I think the quarterback will start to become apprehensive and not pull the trigger on some certain throws and miss people when they're open, like we saw Riley Leonard do, like we saw Sam Hartman do in big games. So I hope that caveat is not put into their, role as the starter. But as far as do I think there's anything with some of the coaches, to be honest with you, I have no idea.
I think there is with Marcus Freeman, and I think that's always the risk of when you have a defensive coach at the top. In defense, Trevor, everything is very structured. It's very structured. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. This guy fits here, you fit off of him. It's very 11 on 11. Offense is different. Yes, they're structured to it, but you also will teach a running back like, hey, I'm teaching you to read it this way, this way, this way. But at the end of the day, you give him the ball and say, go get to the end zone. Like, do you think that when you watch Deshaun Watson play at Clemson, or you watch Kyler Murray play at Oklahoma, or you watch even some with Joe Burrow at LSU, different type of player, when you watch some of these really talented quarterbacks, do you think everything that they do is just within the system and everything is done? No, there's always like, dude, I just saw it a one-on-one and I said, I'm freaking taking that. And there has to be something to that. And I remember how much flack Dabo took in 2016 when Deshaun Watson had 17 picks that year. I believe it was 17 picks.
It's 17.
And there was like, you guys have to understand, no, I don't love the picks, but like if I beat that out of him essentially, then I'm also taking away this, and this, and this that makes him so great. So you kind of got to live with it sometimes. And that's that right here, how you're interpreting this is why I ultimately think Marcus is leaning towards Kenny Minchie. When I hear that comment, and then I hear about some of the wow plays that CJ makes, but then also some of the mistakes, I think that's what he's saying. I don't care about the end result. It was the wrong read. You can't feel that way as an offensive coach. There has to be some level of, okay, why did you make that throw? Because it might have been the wrong decision until you hear him explain why he made that decision. Now, if a quarterback throws a post route into triple coverage and your 6'4" receiver just out jumps everybody for the football, that's one of those, no, dude, that wasn't you trying to make a play. That was you making a mistake. It's just our dude is better than their dudes. That's different. And so you have to allow there to be some of the, I got to live with that wow play, even if it wasn't necessarily the read that you want, because this is who that guy is. That's different than being reckless with the football. Like, that's the thing for me is the first thing doesn't mean the second thing in what you're saying. But you also have to say is like, am I getting enough of the wow plays to compensate for the mistakes? And when you look at, for example, I often mention Deshaun Watson in these instances, but here's the thing about Deshaun Watson in 2016. Yes, he threw 17 interceptions, but he also threw for 4,593 yards. He also threw for 41 touchdowns. He also rushed for 629 yards and had 9 more touchdowns. So yeah, I'll live with 15 to 17 interceptions if you're going to give me 5,222 yards of offense and 50 touchdowns. Right? Like, so that wow better be really wow to overcome if you're turning the ball over that much. Or like, look, I'm going to have to live with that early, because I think by the time we get to game 6, 7, 8, 9, he won't be making those same mistakes if that's the direction you want to go. So I think there's something to that. I just think that I don't know that I would say it's reckless. I just think it's more aggressive is the word that I would use, because reckless is not aggressive. Reckless is just reckless. And that would be my differentiation on that particular one.
From PJC 1122, based on everything you know about Mike Denbrock, who do you think he would prefer as the starter? I know you don't have this information, just curious on your take.
I think too many people are focusing on the style that Mike Denbrock wants. He wants a pocket passer. He wants a dual threat guy. At the end of the day, what Mike Denbrock wants is the guy who gives them best chance to take every single series down the field and put it in the end zone. Ultimately, that's what he wants. I don't want to get into speculating that he wants CJ or he wants Kenny, because here's the thing. Well, he did this with Jaden Daniels, and he did that with Desmond Ridder. My answer is, well, if that's what he wants, then why did they recruit Noah Grubbs and Teddy Gerard? Like, why didn't they go with other quarterbacks? Mike Denbrock wants a guy that can, every time he gets the ball, he can lead the team down for a touchdown and lead your team to points on a higher percentage. Sometimes that's a mobile guy. Sometimes that's a drop back guy. And like, end of the day, if he has a mobile quarterback that can't do that, then he's going to go, but a pocket passer that can, then he's going to go with the pocket passer that can. If he's got a pocket passer that can't do that, but a mobile quarterback that can, he's going to go with the mobile quarterback. Mike Denbrock wants a quarterback that can lead his team up and down the field for touchdowns against the bad teams on the schedule and the good teams on the schedule. Ultimately, that's what he wants. I don't think he would ever pick another Riley Leonard type of quarterback, but that's what he went with last year and did a great job of building around it, because that's the guy that gave him the best chance to do what I just said last season. I know for a fact that Mike Denbrock wants to throw the ball more than they threw last year. And how do I know that? Look at every team he's ever coached on. They've all thrown the ball better than that when they were good. But I also know that he said, look, but this is who we got, and he's great at these things, so let me tailor the offense to fit him, because he gives us the best chance to move this dang ball up and down the field and score points. And that's what Mike Denbrock wants. And if it's a pocket passer, great. If it's a dual threat guy, great. But the dual threat, if it's equal, maybe he has a preference one way or the other, but it's rarely equal. But if the one guy is slightly ahead of the other guy, he's not going to be like, yeah, but this guy is my style preference, so that's going to give him bonus points. No, that's not how it's going to work. It's who moves the offense the best, the most consistently. And I would imagine that while Mike Denbrock doesn't love interceptions and turnovers, that he won't look at it the same way Marcus Freeman does just because of the difference of offense and defense. A defensive coach will look at a turnover and be like, freaking turnover. Whereas an offensive coach will be like, dude, it was 3rd and 9. He took a shot down the field and got picked off on the sideline. I mean, the way our team punts, it's not a whole lot different than a punt. You know, how's that any different than getting stuffed on 4th and 2 at your own 40? How's that any different? But offensive coaches tend to look at those things differently than defensive coaches. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying it's different.
From Tom Redinger, will the starting quarterback, regardless of who it is, throw the ball down the field more than Ian Book? Will he throw players open rather than waiting for them to be open to throw the ball?
I hope so. But I mean, we don't know the answer to that because we haven't seen any of these guys playing a game. My one concern is that I do worry that the don't turn it over thing can take you away from some of those. If it's not a one-on-one or if it's not open, I'm not taking that chance. That's my concern. And that's true for both quarterbacks. Because, like, what if, okay, CJ, we're going to have you start, but I can't have you doing this, and this, or we're going to have to go another direction. Well, then he's going to be like, well, I'm not going to try to make those throws anymore because I don't want to turn it over, do this, that. That's the concern, Trev. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I guess if this was a buy, sell, hold, I'm going to hope buy it. You know, you don't bring in Mike Denbrock and last year, and you don't bring in Malachi Fields and Will Pauling this year, and you don't have a tight end with the skill set of Eli Raritan and get the running backs involved in the pass game as much as you have so far this offseason to just run RPOs, bubble screens, and slants. So I'm going to hope so. Another one from Tom. Does the team have a secondary leadership team outside of the captains? Yeah, Tom, I would say so. I think it's going to look a little bit different than what you might think a stereotypical captain will. I don't know if yet I can see a world where Leonard Moore is getting in the face of somebody the same way that a Don Shula will. And I don't mean getting somebody's face in a disparaging way or you're bad, you need to be better, but it's as a coach, on the field coach. I think that leadership is going to come a little bit more by example. You know, it's going to be more of the, hey, let me take you under my wing and help coach you up. You know, if I'm Leonard Moore, I'm looking for any reason to reach out to, and it sounds like they're doing a heck of a job doing it on their own, but, you know, of Cree Thomas and Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden reaching out to Christian Gray and Leonard Moore and them being the leaders to take them under their wing and say, hey, here's how I would play this. Hey, here's how your feet can be better. Hey, I saw you do this with your hands on this play. Hey, don't shoot your hands until they shoot. That type of thing. So, yes, I fully believe that they have leadership on their team. I mean, you have Jalen Stroman in, who is a 3-year player at Virginia Tech. And so, yes, I definitely think that there's leadership outside of the captains for sure.
I want to respond to something because Facilitate said this. He goes, an interception carries a different kind of weight in game than a 4th and 2 stop. Only emotionally. And this is my whole point. Only emotionally. If you throw a pick on 3rd and 5 at the 35-yard line, or you get stopped on 4th and 2 at the 35-yard line, the other team still has the ball at the 35-yard line. And a 4th down, have you ever seen a defense moderately react to a 4th down stop? You ever seen a team stop a team on 4th down and be like, that was a nice play. Let's jog off the field. Or do they act the same exact way they do when they stop a team on 4th down? If anything, I think the 4th down stop can mean more because that's more of a mano physical, we whooped you off the line type of thing. So I don't agree that it carries a different kind of weight than a 4th and 2 stop. Where it carries a different weight is the 3rd down sack that you punt the ball away. That has different weight as opposed to the post route interception. that can carry a different weight. That can have more of a momentum changing aspect of it. Ant VR said momentum is a real thing. I'm sorry, but a fourth down stop and a turnover both are momentum swingers, like you're saying. I don't think one carries more than the other. The difference is when if you throw a pick at the 35 and the guy runs it back to the 8, that can have a difference. That's not what I'm referring to. So that's to me, those are both huge plays, and they may emotionally impact the offense. I don't think they emotionally impact the defense of your team at all. It's like, hey, we got to step up. The defense doesn't care how the other team got the ball. They care the ball. We got to go 35. That's what they care about. Fans aren't going to be less excited over a pick than a 4th and 2 stop. If anything, the 4th and 2 stop gets you more fired up than the other way around. And that's my thing. The one that's different is if Kenny takes a sack on the 35 and you got to punt it and it goes 40 yards as opposed to the 3rd and 9 40-yard post interception. That carries different weight from a momentum standpoint. Where a punt is more of just a normal part of the game, strategic part of the game. And that's where I think the difference is. So if you want to compare the turnover compared to the long pass, that's a different deal. But 4th and 2 stop compared to interception at the same spot is no different from a momentum standpoint. That's my whole point. I'd rather have neither. I'd rather not throw picks, and I'd rather convert all 4th downs, but that's not always how it goes.
Just your ordinary Joe. In terms of defensive vulnerabilities of first 2 opponents versus the attributes of Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr, is it the case that one quarterback is naturally suited for game 1 and the other best for game 2?
It's a great question, Joe. I don't know that that's how they're viewing it, other than bigger picture. I do think there are some who view the mobile guy who, is more willing to maybe take the easier throw as the safer option against a team like Miami and Texas A&M. I do think that might be part of it. So I think that's going to make one guy, whoever suited for game 1 is also going to be better suited for game 2. Where I think we could see this is, you think that one guy's maybe a little bit more ready right now. The other guy has the weight of the world on his shoulders. So you start the one guy now, and then you get to a certain point, and if he's not really taking that jump, then maybe you make a move. I could see something like that.
Irish legend Joe Montana. With all the speed on defense, I think they made more big plays this year. I think they will make more big plays this year. Do you see it the same?
I do. Because I think the batted passes, the interceptions are still going to be similar. Hopefully the forced fumbles are similar. Where Trevor and I have talked about this when we were doing our predictions throughout the offseason, is I think the sack numbers could be greater. The tackles for loss in the run game, I think, will be greater. And so I've count those as big plays without seeing a drop off in some of those other areas. So I do see it that way.
Agreed. I think this defense will create a lot more negatives. From Casey MCC, what 3 matchups are you going to watch closely in the Miami game?
Well, Casey, I haven't done a full breakdown yet of Miami, who's winning certain battles and all that. So I'll be a little bit more generic, but one for sure that's going to be specific is, can Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner handle Ruben Bain?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a big one. That's on the negative side. On the positive side, can the interior of the Notre Dame offensive line dominate a solid Miami interior that's got some question marks, whether it be youth and experience like a Justin Scott, or the kid from Louisiana Tech, who's this nice player, but not like an elite, Vince Wilfork type of guy from 01-02 that Miami used to have on the inside. It's that. And then, on the other side, also on offense, it's who do they have that's going to be able to check Jaden Greathouse in the slot and Malachi Fields outside? Can Notre Dame win that battle? And that's not like who you're going to have a check. Like they don't have anybody. It's okay, let's see who you have. And can Notre Dame's receivers win those matchups? I think those are key. Other side of the ball, Trev, I'm going to say same thing. They've got tackles that are big reputation guys. A lot of preseason love. One of them, I think Francis Maunoa, I think that's kind of earned. The other one, not so much. If those guys shut down your pass rush on the edge, then Carson Beck's going to get real comfortable throwing the football, and that could make for some potential big play opportunities and definitely some chain moving opportunities. I think that's a big one. And when you have an advantage, that a perceived advantage, you got to win that, Trevor. And Notre Dame has a perceived advantage when it comes to by anyone that like is rational and knows football. I'm not talking about Miami fans who think they're better. I've seen Miami fans argue that Notre Dame or Miami has better running backs than Notre Dame. I'm not talking about like irrational people that don't know anything about football outside of their team. I'm like real football people. They're going to say, look, young receivers, talented for Miami, but haven't been in the spotlight, haven't had to step up and play in this type of moment. How are they going to thrive against a couple corners that literally just went through 4 playoff games and played pretty darn good football? When you have that kind of matchup, you've got to win it. And then the last one is going to be the linebackers against the running backs, run game wise, and then also pass game wise. Because Miami does have, like, when I say that it's a joke to think that their running backs are better than Notre Dame's, that doesn't equal they're not good. They're very good. And, Mark Fletcher's a big kid. How can you handle him on 3rd and 2? Do you hit him at the line of scrimmage and he falls forward for a first down? Or can you hit him on 3rd and 2 at the line of scrimmage and he doesn't get to the sticks? And then also with Jordan Lyle out of the backfield, Mark Fletcher in the screen game, I think their backs can also be weapons in the pass game. And if Miami watched any film of Notre Dame last season, they're going to say, hey, are there ways we can exploit their linebackers in coverage? So I think that's the other matchup. Anything that you'd add to that one, Trevor?
Mine is just all indirect based. Honestly, it's like a similar conversation to what we had with Georgia of whose defensive line wins the day. I think that's going to be huge. Whichever defensive line I think takes the day is going to give their team a significant advantage in winning the football game. So it's another one that I'm paying attention to. But it's not – when I mean indirect, I mean Notre Dame's defensive line and Miami's defensive line will never be on the field at the same time. So which unit performs the best respectively for each of their teams? Something I'm going to be paying attention to. From Tristan Schaup, I don't want to be known as a special teams guy like Vince, but have you got eyes on special teams at all? If so, what are your thoughts?
Nothing more than the drills they do at the beginning of practice. We saw them kick field goals the first day. We talked about on the show. I've literally not seen them kick a single PAT field goal since. I have no idea. Marcus Freeman said that as of right now, Noah Burnett's going to win the job. That was a funny moment, but we said Noah Grubbs. He goes, oh, man, I hope that's not a violation. That was hilarious. Did you see that, Trev, in the press conference? I thought that was really funny. But honestly, I don't know anything outside of that. And the only other one, Trev, is obviously the one I know you're fired up about is when Marty Biaggi said that there's a chance they're going to see Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price back there returning kicks. It's just stuff we've been told. We haven't seen anything.
Hoping to see it this fall.
Anthony Hans asked, are you surprised Will Pauling was named a captain? We did address that at the beginning a little bit, just from the standpoint of all the other candidates that were returners, but we're not surprised. But also at the same time, I'm not shocked by it. I didn't predict it, but I wouldn't say that I'm shocked by it because of all the things we've heard and the fact that he was captain last year at Wisconsin. And he's also someone that Mike Brown has coached all but one of his years in college. So there's more of a familiarity also than a normal transfer player. So a little surprised, but not shocked by it because of all the good things we've heard about him. I'm going to read this one. I want to get your thoughts on this one, Trevor, from Joe Allen. Do you think that Miami will struggle in their passing game early in the season like Leonard and Notre Dame last year?
I think they will, but I think it'll be for different reasons. My big picture, similar reason for, Leonard not building enough chemistry over the spring, but the one thing that Notre Dame had last year was experienced receivers. Like there's very unproven production at Miami at the wide receiver position. Last year, you bring in Bo Collins, who was basically a 3-year starter at Clemson. You brought in Chris Mitchell, who was an 1,000-yard receiver at FIU the year before that. Jaden Greathouse had 5 touchdown receptions as a true freshman, and that was with being out in and out of the lineup with hamstring issues. Mitchell Evans was back healthy. And so The struggle is more from Riley's lack of connection with them. I think with Beck, it's just you never know how somebody's going to be off of an elbow injury like that. Compound that with it is a new system. And then you also compound that with the lack of experience at receiver. I do think that they will struggle, but it's not going to be because Carson Beck is going to look, he's not going to go first read and then run. So the struggle will look different when you watch the game, but I do think that they'll struggle.
Yeah, I also I don't disagree with you on that one, Trevor, but I think part of the issue that Notre Dame had last year too was Riley is a different type of quarterback also. And throwing wasn't his primary strength. It is for Carson Beck. So it's a little bit different.
From Tom Redinger, will you all be around for the NC State game for a tailgate?
We will be doing tailgates for, as of right now, Texas A&M and USC. Now, we've thought about maybe doing like a couple meetups like we did for the spring game, Trev, which I thought was fun, but I'm not sure about that just yet. But I'll be there. We're just not going to be doing a tailgate. But I'll say this, if you guys are ever if you like want to do your own, hey, a bunch of IB people are going and you guys want to get together and you do a tailgate, just let me know and I'll try my best to show up for it. I won't be the one organizing it. Because A, that takes a lot of time, and B, that's very expensive.
From Sean, do you guys think Malachi Fields could see some action from the slot?
Sean, it's possible. I think Mike Denbrock will want to do some things. And this may vary game to game, but, Trevor, I talked about it this summer. I think we're in agreement here. There's always merit to moving guys around, so you don't always know where people are going to be. Hey, look, we want to get this matchup. We think if we travel – Malachi Fields over in a motion, we don't think they're going to travel that corner over. We think they'll just bump a safety or nickel out or safety out, bring a safety down. We can get to a really nice slot fade type matchup against that. Or, look, we just want to throw them a slot fade. We just like the matchup. They've got a nickel who's 5'9", and he's going to cover him in a slot fade, and so we're going to put him in that matchup. So there's certainly, I think we will see times when that's the case. But it won't obviously be the primary thing. But I'll be honestly a little surprised if there aren't some situations, whether it's just lining them up there or motioning them over, that we don't see that to some degree.
Ballpeen Shillelagh, if a quarterback was to do one of the following too often, which would you prefer? 1, scramble. 2, stay in the pocket for too long. 3, tuck and run. 4, throw the ball away.
If he was to do one too often, I would probably say scramble. I think of the 4, that gives me the best chance to get some positives. Staying in the pocket too long is rarely because when you say too long, you don't mean being poised in the pocket. You mean he's in there too long, which results in hits and sacks. I take that as a negative, not a, boy, that guy does a great job of sitting in the pocket as long as he can and finding those open receivers down the field. I didn't take it that way. Tuck and run, no, I don't. I'm never a big fan of tucking and run. It has such a negative connotation. Throw the ball away, no. I think that's the most safe option. That's the most neutral option. But I think scramble is going to be some negatives, but it's also going to result in you making some plays, throwing and running. So if you're going to do one too much of those 4 not great options, I'd probably go with scrambling. What say you, Trev?
Yeah, I'm probably in the same boat. If I had to rank them in order, I'd probably go scramble, throw the ball away, tuck and run, and then stay in the pocket. If I had to rank them. From James Salumi, why would Freeman go conservative with the quarterback now, given how aggressive he's been with our offensive line and other position battles and just his in-game decisions?
Part of it, James, is just that's what he's always done. I don't know that there's any time last year that you could say that Notre Dame got aggressive with their quarterback play in the throwing game. They would in the passing game or the running game, partly because Riley was so good at it, partly because the analytics tell you to be more aggressive in those situations. And some coaches just have this thing about interceptions. It's just a big thing. And so they kind of overreact to it. Think about it. If you're a defensive coach, what's the thing you always what do you practice every single day to do what? Get turnovers, get turnovers, get turnovers, get turnovers. So it's not crazy to think that you look at your offense and you're like, what's the one thing you don't want to do? Turn it over, turn it over, turn it over, turn it over. So I get it, but I just think his thing is, as a defensive coach, is if a team has to go 75 plus every time they get the ball to beat us, they're not going to beat us. What you can't do is give a team short fields. And I'm sympathetic to that. It's just interesting that I think at times he's been unwilling to allow the throwing game to take some of those risks while being willing to take those risks with the fourth down run game and the special teams. But again, you're talking about a guy who says we're going to be line driven. So in the throwing game, you're putting your faith in everybody's got to be on the same page. O-line, running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, all of it's got to be on the same page. When it comes to the 4th and 2, it's just really the blockers and the ball carrier. I think that's part of it. And then the other thing is, if you look at the specifics of this line, I think we should all be able to agree that if you're going to put your money on this offensive line doing something, running it or pass pro, most of us are going to put our money on this line run blocking, not pass pro in a crucial situation. There's a reason every time they did a 4th down or clutch 3rd down last year, I shouldn't every time. A lot of the time they did something quick or got the quarterback out of the pocket. They weren't doing a whole lot of 4th and 5s of Riley Leonard just dropping back in the pocket. And I think part is because there wasn't the same faith that they're going to be able to protect them. I think that's part of it too.
From PK, you have Jaden Greathouse with great back shoulder catching ability, as well as Malachi Fields catching against a great defense. Which of Notre Dame's quarterbacks can best execute these throws?
Well, from what we've seen in practices, the jersey scrimmages, things that I've heard, it's CJ Carr, but they both can make them. It's just, I think these are the wow throws that CJ tends to make. Like I heard that CJ hit Jalen Greathouse in the Wednesday scrimmage, hit Jaden Greathouse on a back shoulder slot fade touchdown. I was told he hit a really impressive fade throw yesterday. I was told he had a great throw to Malachi Fields. He had 2 actually great big down in the field throws to Malachi Fields. So if this is all that we're talking about, this is, I think, not really a question that CJ's better at it, but it's not something that Kenny's not good at. It's not like CJ's great at it and Kenny's bad at it. CJ's really good at it. Kenny's good at it. I don't think Kenny's accuracy on the slot fade is as good. We saw that in the spring game. And we talk about how Will Pauling slowed up, but that ball landed out of bounds. That was not a good throw. There are other things that I think that movement-wise that Kenny does a little bit better than CJ with his legs, but it's more so about avoiding the bad mistakes. Like there's literally nobody that I know in the program that thinks Kenny has more arm talent or passing ability than CJ when it comes to holy moly, that's a heck of a throw. But that's not all there is. It's also about, okay, those are great, but is the negative balance it out a little bit, or can I live with it because of how great those things are? Whereas the other guy can still make some of, like, we're not talking about like the option is CJ with his wow throws and all Kenny does is throw slide routes and slants and checkdowns. That's not what we're talking about here. It's not to that extreme. So yes, CJ, in my opinion, definitely makes these throws better than Kenny does. But I don't think it's not quite that simple. I'm not saying you're saying that, PK. That's my sort of response as part of the conversation.
From Anthony Hands, are you worried the offense will come out slow since the starting quarterback will only have maybe a week of practice?
So, Trevor, I know you're young, but I know you know who Han Solo is. So I think that we're going to have to say that that's Anthony Hans because it's Han Solo. Come on now. I know you have a headache, but you can't mess up Star Wars. I'm obviously giving you a hard time. I am, Trev. I'm always concerned about that with the offense early in the season. I don't know about you, but that's always an early season concern for me with the offense.
Riley Leonard could be coming back, and this would be a concern.
Yeah. Offense just tends to be a little further behind than the defense early in the season.
Well, and historically, what we saw from Notre Dame's offense last year, they started slow in almost every game of the year. Just not Louisville, Army, IU, arguably. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm worried about it all the time. From Gavin Wright, I know it's the elephant in the room, but I just feel like both quarterbacks are going to play a lot this year. Am I just way off?
I think it depends on how he means it, Trev. If I think that I'll be shocked if I want to give the scenarios. I'll be shocked if the guy that starts the opener is not shocked. I'll be a little surprised if the guy that starts the opener starts all 15 or 16 games for a million reasons. Injury, performance, like let's just say hypothetically that Kenny wins the job narrowly because CJ's turning the ball over too much and he's doing this and he's doing that. Let's just say that's the case. And it was close. And you get out to the season in the first 4 or 5 games, Kenny's just being Kenny. And that's a good thing. But all of a sudden in practice, CJ's toning down the interceptions, but he's still hitting the ball. He's still hitting the big time throws, but he's not turning the ball over. Well, yeah, Kenny's the one that got us through the first 4 or 5 games, but I now think that this is the better option moving forward. Do you make that move? Or vice versa? Let's say you think, okay, the upside for CJ is just too great. So you put him in there. And you live with some of those early mistakes. But you get game 4, 5, 6, and he's still making the same mistakes he made in the first week of fall camp. Is that still the best option for you? So I think there's a scenario where with Kenny, there's a scenario where he starts, and if he just is kind of steady Eddie all year, but now CJ is starting to be more dominant in practice, that you might make a change. And then on the flip side, you may go with the upside of CJ, but if he's just not growing and developing, then you may say, hey, we got to go with steady Eddie over here, who can also make plays. So I could see something like that happening just because it's close now. I have a hard time believing that it's this close, that it's just, okay, that's the way it's always going to be. I don't know if I think that's going to happen, especially since no one has really seized it the way that we hoped they would do.
From Swandong, who do you think will be the starting nickel? Also, will Snead start over KVA with his recent wins in practice?
I don't know what you mean by wins, but from everything I've seen, Jalen Snead's been with the ones at will linebacker, and I don't think that's going to change. I think Kingston is going to still play both spots a lot, at least in week 1. I don't really care, honestly, about who starts. Don't care. I'm very curious to more so see what is the stat breakdown.
Yeah.
The snap breakdown. Who's in there and the crucial drives in the end of quarters and in the games. I care more about that than who's out there in the first series.
Yep.
Then we got one more, Trevor, from Irish in Florida.
David Pollock was a great episode, though he still seems skeptical of the Notre Dame offense and still had the same feel of the major media on Notre Dame offense. What does Notre Dame need to do and improve for that to stop?
I don't actually disagree a ton with people having skepticism about the Notre Dame pass offense, because that's really what the concern is. I mean, he talked about how Notre Dame just imposed their will in the run game on Georgia.
Yeah.
It all comes down to, do you have the athletes on the perimeter, and do you have the quarterback to make the throws that you need to make? And I think that's a very fair thing to question. So what does Notre Dame need to do to prove that, to stop that narrative? Be a more consistently effective throwing team, and not just when you're behind in the second half, and not just when you're playing bad teams, but all the time. Like, that's what they need to do. Have receivers step up and say, hey, we can make plays against anybody. Win those big one-on-ones. For example, you think of the offsides play against Georgia. Hit that throw. So then you don't even need the offsides. You don't need to take the penalty because Riley threw a better ball and Bo made a better catch on that 4th down play. Win those one-on-ones where it's like Jaden Greathouse did that in the second half against Penn State, but those were few and far between. Do that more often where your quarterback's making those big money throws and your receivers are making those big money plays. The back shoulder to Bo against A&M. Just do that more often and do more consistently. Do that in the big games more frequently, where you're not winning games passing for 160 yards like every week. mean, Notre Dame averaged less than 200 yards a game last year, and none of their receivers got drafted. They had 3 guys eligible for it. None of them got drafted. Like, change those things. Yeah. That's what changes that narrative, Trev. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, David Pollack had some of the same skeptical views that I still had about Notre Dame's passing game. I'm a little bit more confident in it because I've gotten to see them up close and I cover the team specifically, but there's still concerns of mine. Mm-hmm. I'm higher on this receiving core, but I do still have to see it. I do. And if it comes true, then I think a lot of that will be put to rest, but got to see it. The passing offense this year needs to be more of an option, not a final resort. And I think once they make that switch, I think that it's going to start turning a lot of heads nationally. So, but they're in a prime position to do so. Well, Bryan, I think that's going to do it for the mailbag. So, listen, folks, I believe IB Nation Sports Beat goes live tonight at 5 p.m. So be sure to hop over and check them out. Bryan and I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. So make sure you have that notification bell hit and you're subscribed to this channel so you know exactly when we go live. On your way out of here, please be sure to hit that like button. And whatever streaming platform you're listening to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. And while you're already in the mode of subscribing to different channels, also be sure to hop over to our CFB Nation channel and subscribe to that. There's going to be a lot of awesome in-season content going on over there as well. Make sure you get ahead of the game, subscribe to CFB Nation. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until tomorrow, that's Bryan. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.